All right, welcome everybody. We're going to go ahead and start the Atherton Planning Commission meeting for Wednesday, October 28th. We'll start it off with a roll call. Roll call, please.
Chair Lane? Here. Vice Chair Polito?
Here.
Commissioner Bryant?
Here.
Commissioner Levison?
Here.
And Commissioner Tonelli?
Here.
And Cindy is new tonight, so we're going to give her a nice little warm-up training program. She may have to abstain on some items depending on how much experience she has or how much information she had prior to being appointed. So she'll call that on her own.
Thank you.
All right, with that, then we'll open for public comments of items that aren't on the agenda. We use this spot to sort of highlight things we might want to know about or get feedback on things that have happened before or just applaud what a great job we're doing. So I'll go ahead and open up the public comment section for things that aren't on the agenda. And no praise tonight. Okay, well, we'll go. All right, then I'll go ahead and nobody online has anything, right, Sean?
No comments from online.
Okay, great. I'll go ahead and close the public comment section and then we'll bring it back for the public hearing items. And on the public hearing items, we'll take the same approach on each item. And if people come online or in the room later, I'll explain it because I want to make sure everybody understands the process we're using. So
Approve the minutes first.
oh, sure. Let me do that. Thank you for catching me on that. All right, let's go ahead and approve the minutes first. Any changes? I didn't see any.
I didn't, the first bold paragraph on page 3 doesn't read right. Doesn't say whether we approved it, disapproved it, ignored it.
I didn't see that. I thought it did.
Describing the motion.
It states the results.
Says that you had 3 ayes, but what was the motion? The motion was to approve the variance, I believe,
Yeah, right.
but it doesn't
Right,
say that.
the word approve is
Word-
missing.
There's a word missing.
Okay.
So other than that, I would move that once that's corrected, I would move that we approve the minutes.
All right, good. With that approval, I need a second.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you, Bob, for abstaining. Yes, thank you. One abstention. All right, with that, then public hearing, we'll start with every item, the same process. We'll start with an overview from a staff, followed by questions from the commission to staff, followed by opening up the item for discussion first from the applicant or the representative, and then anyone else who likes to speak on the item, and then we'll bring it back to the commission for discussion and action as appropriate. And we'll go through that on every item, so I'll remind people of that as we get into the items. So with that, the first item is the heritage tree removal request of an oak tree on 29 Shearer Drive. We'll start with a staff report. Sean, are you on this one?
Yes, I am.
All right, good.
All right. Good evening, commissioners, and special welcome to Commissioner Levison. Our first item is item 4A, which is a request for heritage tree removal for one heritage tree at 29 Shearer Drive. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission deny the request to remove the one heritage coast live oak. The subject site is located at 29 Shearer Drive. There we are. And is a 0.66 acre interior lot in the R1A zoning district. Neighboring properties in all directions are of a similar size, and the subject lot is smaller than the standard R1A lot size of approximately 1 acre. Is generally square in shape. Review of building permits associated with the property revealed that there was a fire that occurred in June 2015 that resulted in the main residence being demolished. And as a result, the property is currently vacant with no structures except for the remnants of the foundation walls and pad for the existing home. The applicant is seeking a heritage tree removal for one 20-inch coast live oak to accommodate a detached carport. As part of a full site development with a new two-story single family residence with a basement and attached ADU. The applicant has provided 2 alternative approaches that do not require the removal of the subject tree. As expressed in the applicant's narrative letter, alternative 1 explains that there's an unideal relationship to the garage, driveway, parking, and turnaround to the street. And alternative 2 approaches the garage and carport on the west side of the property and would affect a total of 7 trees. The proposed carport otherwise complies with all standards related to the front, rear, side setbacks, distances between structures, and height for accessory buildings. Our staff recommendation echoes the recommendation of our town arborist, who cannot support the removal of the heritage tree. And with that, I'll invite our town arborist, Sally Bentz, to speak to the project.
Sally, got any?
This is a pretty straightforward project. I didn't feel this coast live oak was dead or dangerous. I didn't feel that the slight lean or the bifurcated trunks was an issue. So in my opinion, I didn't feel that I could support this project. I mean, I'm open to any questions.
Yeah, the question I had, anybody else have a question to start? I had a question on the way it leans, the way it sits over the foundation that's there now. The proposed foundation would be virtually in that same spot or slightly more, right?
No, Sean, can you go back to the plan? The foundation will be where the tree is located.
No, I'm not talking about
Oh.
I'm not talking about the carport. I'm talking about the house. And here's my question, really.
Yeah.
I was concerned about the overhang of the branches on the, I was looking at the foundation, what's left of the house, and the tree overhangs that foundation. So rather than being concerned about the carport, I was concerned about the tree would impact a new property built there in terms of proximity to the new property, and the effect it would have on the building, the new building.
Well, the new building would have to be 10 times away, so they couldn't put the new,
The building
House.
is, the
if
proposed
the-
buildings is in the buildable area though, right? It's in the buildable area. Brittany, you got
yeah,
it?
but if the tree was going to remain and they weren't doing the carport, the new house would have to be 10 times away. However, in this example, they're proposing an ADU. So an ADU has a TPZ of 8 times.
Maybe it'll help clarify. So I think the question, Sally, is, I don't think it's here in the drawings, is the new house sitting on top of the original foundation? Because you're looking at that photograph.
Well, I'm looking at the map and that. I think the new house is slightly bigger than that foundation, just slightly, but I'm not sure. And on that side may be the same as the foundation. So what I was concerned about, if you have a two-story property being built right there, that tree brushes all the way up the last story and a half of it.
But what I'm saying is that they wouldn't be allowed to build that close because the new structure, if they can show the house as is in this location because of the tree is proposed to be removed, but if the tree was there, that proposed ADU and house would have to be further away.
Okay, then Sean, I need to understand the buildable area on this property then, because I would always give a preference to buildable area on anything over the tree location, because the tree location was done based on a different scenario in terms of when the property was built. So where's the buildable area? Is that the dashed line around the box?
That's
Town
correct.
planner Brittany
Oh.
Bennix, can I
Oh.
just jump in? Because I think I
Okay.
understand what you're asking. So we have the tree shown on the plans here that's shown for removal. And you can see the dashed lines indicating the various TPZ zones.
Mhm.
And there's clearly some overlap there on the outer dashed line
Mhm.
that goes into the buildable area, assumingly of the primary residence. But it also looks like there's a note there that's the ADU entry. And so that actual portion of the development, I think, is accommodating the ADU, which is why it's allowed. But then the carport on its own does require full removal. So does
Alright.
that get at what you're asking about how the building itself encroaches into the TPZ?
Yeah, I'm asking about, regardless if it's an ADU or not, that property is being built in the buildable area right now as it's proposed, correct? So if they didn't have the ADU there and it just happened to be a family room, we would allow them to build in the buildable area. Isn't that correct?
Yes, but currently they're showing the ADU outside of the buildable area. So if it was just a living room, it would have to be inside the buildable area.
So that's what I'm asking. Which one of these dashed lines is the buildable area? The inside one or that outside one?
Inside one.
The inside one?
That's
All
correct,
right,
the inside. line.
So what is the proximity of the tree? The second dash line around the tree falls into the buildable area. All right, and that's what I'm asking about. If you build a property there, the tree hits it. All right, let's hear from the applicant, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna come back to that at the end, because this is one of those things to do with buildable area for me, more, even more than the tree. Any other questions?
Yeah, Sally, so, tree 25 is being removed in the driveway area?
Yeah,
the
so
garage
that
area?
one received a removal permit. I'm not sure if it has
It's
been removed.
gone.
Yeah, it's
gone.
no longer there.
So I'm just wondering, what's the difference between the two situations between 24 and 25?
25 was a Monterey pine that was in decline. It
Okay.
had beetles. And so I approved that one for removal.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I had the
Okay.
same question. So apparently there's a tree on the adjacent property that's got an X through it here, and so that's been removed as well.
So that they received a permit for that tree and it's been removed. Both the applicant and the neighbor requested that removal. The tree was in decline and it would have been something I would have sent the neighbor a letter about anyway, so.
All right, anything else? Okay, good. So we'll go ahead and hear from the applicant or their representative. You're up. Yes, yes. And make sure, and the mic's on, right? I see a green light, so we should be good.
Hello. Okay. So my name is Pankaj Gupta. I'm got my wife Richa and son Vidura here as well. Thank you for presenting this. So first of all, we're very excited to move in the community. I love it. So far, very nice. We both are entrepreneurs, and this has been a very new learning experience. Loving it so far. I think I presented our requirements in the letter. Couple things I would like to emphasize. One is we are very nature, loving, and we are looking to plant more trees in this space. And secondly, I'd like to emphasize that this is a multi-generational home. So we have 6 occupants, and we have about 6 cars. So we like to house them somewhere which looks nice and all that good, while they're parked in the property. Okay, so that's all I want to say.
All right.
Appreciate that, and we have our architect to say that.
All right, very good. Thank you. Thank you for waiting also.
Good evening. I'm Bob Swat, architect. I'm here with Phoebe Wong Oliveros. We're the architectural team for this project. This will be pretty brief. As the owner has mentioned, it's kind of a multi-generational house. There will be more than 2 cars and more than 2 drivers, and they're hoping that they can find a place that would, so that this wouldn't look like a parking lot, and place the cars in a reasonable way. So the first thing I'd like to do is bring up the slides that we sent. So the first one is up that I can see. I hope you can see that
Yeah, we can
too.
see it on our
Okay.
screens here
So
too.
the site's 2/3 of an acre. It's flat. It's surrounded by trees on all sides, including on the opposite side of the street. So it's very well screened from all of the neighbors. The next slide is a view looking from the street, and that's the old foundation of the original building. And I think it's very difficult, close to impossible, to see other buildings from the center of that site. I don't think you can see any of the neighboring houses. We've been there and we've met with the neighbors, but it's very hard to see another house there because of all that dense foliage, which is, many of those trees are on the site and many of the trees are not on the site. They're on neighboring sites. And so there are 9 heritage trees on this 2/3 of an acre site. There are 10 neighboring houses that are 10 neighboring trees, let's call them, that their protected area is on this property. So that's almost 20 trees. It's very well screened from all sides. And as I mentioned, very hard to see a neighboring house. So the next slide is a very simple diagram which shows the buildable area. And what's important in the buildable area is this blue area, and that's not including ADUs that attached or detached. But the line that's important is the line that goes horizontal through that blue area. That's the setback for an accessory structure, the setback from the front property line. And so let's go now to the next diagram. So this is our freehand sketch of the site plan, and what you'll see is that the building is planned to be within the buildable area, and there are trees surrounding it on all sides. And if you look in the lower right-hand corner, you'll see a little square area, that's the garage. It's a two-car garage, and it's access. You can see the access, and you can see how you actually egress on the driveway. And the access is on the side of the house, which meets the pattern of the neighborhood. Most of the houses enter garages from the side yard. Okay, on the upper left-hand corner, outside of the buildable area, you'll see a box and a 1 and a box and a 2. Okay, there you go. Thank you. So number 1, that's a possible place where you could actually where you could build a carport. And if you did that, we would be in the area of the tree protection zone for a 40-inch oak tree, which is on the neighboring property.
Yeah.
Okay. The site right below that, which is number 2, which is close to that horizontal line that I was pointing out, is another possible area, but that would also be in the tree zone of that same 40-inch oak tree. Also, if you had a driveway on that side of the house, you'd be going over the tree zones of many very important trees. So if you look to the right side and we look at number 3, the box number 3, that would affect a 70-inch redwood tree. That's a really big tree on the neighboring property. And so that doesn't look like that place would work either. So that leaves us with area number 4, which I colored blue so that it would match the color of the garage because it's for a car. And so that's our proposed location for a carport. And that affects that one tree, the one tree which is 20 inches in diameter. But we care about trees just like you and the town cares, and we understand it and we appreciate that. And we certainly would not propose to take down a tree, a heritage tree, unless it really conflicted with the owner's program for what they want for their family. Then it's a question mark in our minds. So let's go to the next slide.
Before you leave that, does the footprint of this proposed location match the footprint of the current foundation that's there?
No, but it matches the buildable area.
I know.
on the
So
setbacks.
is the proposal bigger or smaller than that, the current, just the cement that's there now?
Oh, I think it's bigger than that, but
Okay, that's what I
it's
thought.
not much. It's still a small buildable area. in
That's
the
what I
center.
thought. Okay, that's my assumption too. Okay, thank you.
All right.
Keep going. Go ahead.
So before we leave this drawing, so back to the, I think it's the redwood. So the carport actually is within that first ring of the redwood as well, correct?
It's within the, what is it, 8 times, I believe is that ring. It's outside of the 8 times, but within the 10 times. So I believe it would be acceptable to the town arborist, but she would have to weigh in on that.
Yeah. Okay, so why not the northwest corner
The northwest corner.
of the
Above-
property?
Where, just say
Right here.
above 1. Well, that's
Above
a,
one.
well, that's a long driveway.
Oh,
yeah.
we can't get there. We'd be driving across all of the tree protection zones of all of those trees on the left-hand side of the.
No,
lawn.
I understand that, but it doesn't have to be impervious coverage.
Well, okay, we would have to be driving all the way back, and I'm
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
sure that the arborist would allow.
Okay.
I can't, I'm not an arborist, but I can't say that would be approved. I don't know.
All right.
So it looks to us like number 4 is the best location, the most reasonable location to put a carport. Let's go to the next slide. This is the tree.
Mhm.
So this is the subject tree. And so I think if that, I believe that, again, you can't see that from anywhere else except on this site. So I believe that if this tree were gone, nobody would notice it except the owners of the property. Still, the tree is valuable. It is leaning. It looks to me like it's leaning away from the big redwood trees to get more sunlight.
Right.
That's my guess, but you
That
know,
is what
again,
it's
that's
doing.
just my feeling about it.
Yeah.
So that's the tree that we're talking about. And let's go to the next slide. And this is what we're proposing for the carport. And so, and this is the front elevation of the house as it's currently designed. It's in the development stages right now. And so the front door, you can obviously see it because it has a color. And it has this area, which is in an accessory zone area where you could do an accessory structure. We think it's handsome, looks nice. I don't think anybody's going to miss that tree, except maybe somebody's going to feel bad that we had to take down a tree, but we're proposing a program that actually works for this family.
Is a tree movable? I mean, is it replaceable somewhere on the property?
What is the question?
Is a tree movable? Could we actually move, could it actually be transplanted to another section? of the property or safely or not?
I would say no.
Okay, because it's just too old and too rooted.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right.
And also, if we did that, they would have to apply to planning commission for the removal based on the transplant, and if the tree died, then they would pay a fine. Because
Alright.
people have wanted to do that
All
before.
right, all
so.
right. I just know we've done it before, but I didn't know.
And the applicant did say that they would, they're not showing it in this drawing, but they did say that if approved, they would plant 2 48-inch oak trees in the front strip there.
Mhm. Okay. All right. Anything else?
No.
Any questions?
Just to be clear what Sally just said, you're talking about 48-inch box.
Yeah, so that's per our code. So if you remove an oak tree, you're supposed to plant 2 48-inch box oaks per removal for the planning commission.
All right.
Or if you just remove a staff level, it's different, it's lower, but for this, they wanted 48-inch box.
All right.
So, and there's no possibility of moving that carport forward because of the setback, is that correct?
That's correct.
I just wanted to make sure I was clear on that.
Yeah, that's what,
Okay.
is that what the dash line in the front of the carport is, the
Yes.
setback requirement? And that wouldn't solve the problem because it's not far enough away. Okay, thank you. Thank you for highlighting that. You okay?
Good.
All right, then, thank you very much. Is there anyone else here to speak on this item? Anybody online? Sean? Okay, then I'll go ahead and close the public comment section, bring it back for discussion and action with the planning commission as appropriate. You know, here's my issue with this one, is it's not the tree, it's not the shielding, it's nothing but that tree's in the wrong spot for the house being built there. Because it leans over, it'll brush the house on build right away, and then it'll only get bigger from there. So it's just one of those trees that was put in the right spot for that location, for that house at that time, and it's totally in the wrong spot for anything new to be built. And I'm hoping it wasn't part of the reason that the place burned down the first time, but it's too close to the house. Go ahead, Bob.
I have other reasons to think we could do without that tree. I wasn't even sure it was heritage. She convinced me. Well, I convinced myself. I took a tape measure out there.
It's obviously inherited heritage because it doesn't look good.
But it's not going to get enough sunlight. It is leaning.
Right.
And if you plant 2 48-inch oak trees, I've grown roughly a dozen oak trees from acorns that are much bigger than that tree now in the time I've lived in my house. So, and I agree that I don't think it's going to hurt anybody. But ultimately, the real thing was when I talked to the neighbor, she had communicated with you, I guess, knew what you were planning to do, et cetera. Didn't have real heartburn about the tree, but had a little bit of heartburn finding out there were going to be 6 people and 6 cars there. That hadn't been communicated. And so this is one of those situations, I think, where having a carport to properly stow those cars rather than have them parked all over the front driveway is a much better outcome. So I would support your request.
Well, plus I think the owners are kind of hamstrung with the size of a smaller lot too for what they're trying to do. So there are certain limitations to the creativity of the project because of the size of the lot and what they're trying to do. And I think that is factored in too.
So, anything else?
I rode my bike by the property, so I went to take a look just because I hadn't seen it. I mean, I would agree. Actually, I expected a much bigger tree,
Mhm.
but it is clearly leaning, and I think you're right. It's because it's seeking sun. I have lots of redwoods on my property too. They grow so incredibly fast and so tall that they sort of shade everything around them.
Right.
So, and it is definitely leaning in to the buildable space.
Right. So, ready for a motion?
I do want to make a statement though, before
Yeah.
you make a motion,
Yes.
that they will need to apply for that staff exception for the carport. I don't think they have done that, so that will also, it doesn't mean the carport's going through because they still need that staff exception.
All right. But is there any issue with the staff exception if the
I
tree's
mean, I'm
not?
gonna have to review it, but probably not. I just, they need to apply for it. I'm just
All right.
saying.
All right, and that's.
I wasn't aware that it would need a staff exception, otherwise I would have put that in my memo.
All right. Okay. All right. Sorry about that. So, but that, with it, with the tree being gone there, there would be nothing hindering it as far as we can tell. Is that correct or not?
You mean for the staff exception for
Yeah.
the redwood, neighbor's redwood tree?
Well, yeah, is that enough in there second? So here's what I don't want to
Oh.
have happen. I don't want to have the tree authorized to be removed and then have it, have the carport canceled because it's within the footprint of the redwood tree next door.
Well, I'm sure their team can apply for it by next week, and so that would be figured out before they remove the tree. Right? Right?
You would put it in
Yeah.
the motion?
I will be on vacation for a
Could
few
you-
days, so
As
just
a
send it to
condition?
me and
Brit-
I can review it next week.
Yeah, Brittany-
Town planner Brittany Benniggs, could you condition, add
Right.
a condition to the motion?
Right.
Yeah,
You could continue it as well. I know, I heard
yeah.
someone suggest
I'm
that.
just. all right,
But I
so-
think you can also look at whether or not there's a condition that could be appropriate in this situation.
I mean, I don't think you should worry about the staff exception getting approved, so I think a condition would be fine.
Just pending approval of the staff exception?
All right.
Uh,
I
Would
move-
that be the way toward it?
Yeah, I guess so, pending approval. All right, so in the future, let's think about that. In the future is a possibility on the alternative motion setup so that we can do it all at once. Here's what I'm reacting to. You know, welcome to the community. But I want to make it easier to do it next time. All right, so my whole thing is they did the right thing. On the other day, I was touring another site, turned around and the person across the street was cutting down a tree without a permit. And the person across the street, on the other side of the street was doing a permit. So I don't want to make the permit process so painful that people come up with ways to go around it.
Mhm.
And so, is there a fee associated with the other request or not?
There is a fee associated with the staff TPZ exception request. That's just standard. Usually I catch this or the applicant tells me, I'm not sure why it wasn't caught this time. Usually I catch it and put it in my memo. So
Well, there's a fee to take down the tree too.
yes, I mean, if you approve this tree for removal, that was the fee they paid for the tree removal.
But if you attach this to this motion at this point, they wouldn't have a fee for the second request, correct?
No, the request at a staff level always has a fee. They don't request things at staff level at planning commission.
So if
Always a
it had
separate
come
fee.
in jointly, there would have been a fee for the removal and a fee
All
for
right, that's all I
the.
was asking.
So there's no additional.
There's no
fee.
additional
No
fee.
additional fee.
All right, that's what I want to make sure. So this is the same what would have been, just one more step, all right? I just want to make sure that it's clear that we're not just creating a step for revenue creation. All right, then I'll go ahead and I'll move the planning commission is ready for a motion, everyone? I move the planning commission find this heritage tree removal for one heritage tree identified as tree number 24 on the 20-inch Coast Oak Live to be categorically exempt from the provisions of the California Environmental Quality Act under 15304 minor alternatives to land, and find the request not contrary to the purpose and intent of the general plan, and approve the heritage tree removal permit of HTR 24-00003 at 29 Shearer Drive for the reasons described in the draft heritage tree removal permit, and pending the approval of, what do you call it?
The staff TPZ exception.
Staff TBC TBC exception.
And
Right.
conditioned on 248-inch trees being planted in.
That should be in the certificate,
Yes,
correct?
in the certificate, yes. All right, motion, is there a second?
Second.
Move seconded. We'll do a roll call on this.
Sure. Chair Lane,
Yes.
Vice Chair Polito,
Yes.
Commissioner Bryan, Commissioner Levison,
Yes.
Commissioner Tonelli.
Yes.
All right, good. Thank you. Good. All right, thank you very much. All right,
Thank you.
all right, nice, it's a nice plan, by the way, too, looks good. All right. Well, the next item, so we're just gonna close out sale on heritage trees tonight. All right, with a request for heritage tree removal of 3 heritage trees on to construct a concrete parking pad at 53 Euclid Avenue and A request for a tree protection zone exception for 2 trees less than 8 times away from the construction of the concrete pad. All right, we'll do the same process on this. We'll start with staff, followed by opening up the public comment followed by questions of staff, followed by opening up the public comment section, starting with the applicant, and then back to the commission for action and discussion. So who has this one? Sean, you have this one too? Okay, go for it.
All right, so this request is for the heritage tree removal of 3 heritage trees and a tree protection zone exception for 2 trees to construct a concrete parking pad at 53 Euclid Avenue. As the proposed project is presented, requires both the heritage tree removal and the tree protection zone exception. Our recommendation is to deny both action or both items today. The subject site consists of 2 properties. Here we are. Under single ownership and located at 37 and 53 Euclid Avenue in the R1A zoning district. Collectively, the combined lots are 2 acres, 1 acre apiece, and the neighboring properties in all directions are of similar 1 acre size. The property, a single main residence is maintained at 37 Euclid Avenue to the north, and the subject lot at 53 Euclid Avenue supports a pavilion, pool house, gravel driveway, and a walking path, as well as approximately 122 trees on site. According to the applicant, the size of the combined parcel requires numerous employees, caretakers, and other personnel to maintain the property daily. And in this way, the applicant is seeking the heritage tree removal and tree protection zone exception to accommodate for a 34-foot by 67-foot concrete parking pad with approximately 4 stalls for service personnel parking located 10 feet from the front and side yard property lines. Table A in your staff reports provides a summary of the subject heritage trees proposed to be removed. Here we are. All 3 trees are described as being in good health and structure. And Table B provides a summary of the subject heritage trees proposed for a tree protection zone exception with special attention to trees number 4 and 5, where their proposed distance from the proposed project is 3x diameter at breast height and 5.5x diameter at breast height. As the resulting pad will not be constructed more than 6 inches above grade, the project does not require additional zoning clearance, and the applicant identified no other locations for the proposed parking pad due to considerations of the impact to other trees on the property and functional property proximity access to the existing vehicular gate on the property line. We did receive 1 late correspondence this evening from a adjacent neighbor expressing her objection to the project, and our staff recommendation follows the recommendation of our town arborist. And with that, we'll introduce Sally Bentz again to take it away.
So I visited the site and I looked at all the trees. So one of the trees I can approve at staff level, but the other 2 I felt were healthy. So I didn't feel that the necessity of a parking space would allow me to recommend 2 redwood trees that were healthy for removal.
Okay.
And also this requires TPZ, so it's they're asking for both removal and TPZ exceptions that are 2 that are below what typically I would approve for TPZ exceptions.
Okay, great. Any questions of staff?
Yeah,
Bob?
do I have a page that shows the TPZ exceptions clearly? Because I don't think,
If you look at this one, you'll see tree 5. That's the distance between the parking pad and tree 5, which is 9 feet 5 inches. And then you got tree number 4, which is 6 feet 2 inches. And 4 and 5, and then
4 and 6, okay.
6 is, I think they're saying that that's 8 times away. So that's the right distance for a driveway to be away. So they don't need an exception for that one.
So it's 5 and 4?
Yep.
I mean, to me, again, I went out to this site and managed to get into the property. If the thing was scaled back, you wouldn't have to remove trees 1 and 2. 3 is the one that you're okay on removing because it's a kind of a weird one.
Yes.
And the only TPZ zone problem might be with number 5. So I'd be inclined to approve a scaled down project. I wouldn't be inclined to approve this one.
Well, let's hear from the applicant before we go there, but the other question I had with staff was Was any other entry area proposed? I mean, there's a cutout here far halfway down that property. I was trying to figure out, that seems like if this were a property that would be built upon, where would the driveway entrance be? Would it be there or would it be at this other cutout farther down? Do you know? Sean? or
I mean, I
anyone?
didn't consider that. The applicant can speak on that.
All right, good.
There's
right.
no house on that second lot, so,
All right.
What,
Yeah.
what other cutout? I didn't see another cutout.
There's one on the map here, but I didn't see one either. When I was there, I just saw the two. But there's one on the map, so I wanted to find out what that was. All right, any other questions of staff then?
No.
All right, good. Then we'll go ahead and
Hi, good evening.
yeah,
Thank
hold
you.
on, I'll open up the public comment section and we'll go ahead and start with the applicant. You're it.
Oh,
I just had to
thanks.
officially,
Thank you
for the record,
for
open up the public
attending
comment.
And hearing to speak about our project. My name is Dave Rossi. I'm the contractor helping the homeowner who's here tonight and our arborist. This is also another new resident of Atherton, moved from the country of Brazil, looking to start a family at this house. I did provide a PowerPoint. The intention for the house isn't multi-generational, but it is to start a family and grow a family. It is essentially 2 lots with 2 houses. And the goal is to actually remove these 2 trees to provide ample parking on site behind the gate that's safe and secure for future family and for growth. There currently is no garage on 53 Euclid. There is a driveway that we're proposing to put this concrete pad. It's currently gravel. It's very small. Doesn't provide a lot of parking or access to turn around or to be functional for generations for this family. Their goal is to stay here as a forever home. They've put significant investment into this property and it's 2 parcels. Next slide. These pictures I thought could be helpful if you haven't had a chance to go to the site. This is a very wooded site. The homeowners absolutely adore the park-like nature of this property. They wanted to preserve every tree they possibly could. There were some olive trees they were talking about relocating for a trellis. They wanted to automatically box them and plant them on their property. They love the setting. Where the red dot is probably the former house of 53 Euclid, and the driveway, if you go to the next slide, there's really just a gate for this access. It's kind of a service gate, and this is where we want to put parking on site. Due to the size of this property, you can see the trees. We don't think it's an undue request to remove 2 trees for on-site parking, and because there is no garage on this lot. Next slide. This is the current entry to the house on 37. You can see it's pretty wooded. And then the next slide, please. This is the gate that we're trying to access for on-site parking. You can see the gravel leading into the property. You can also see how wooded it is on this property behind the gate. Next slide. You can see the 2 gates are approximately 260 feet apart. Just keep looking at. And so this is a very large lot with a lot of frontage. It is a tree-lined street. Most of the trees are on this property, and the owners would like to preserve the wooded nature and not park a bunch of cars on the street in respect for their neighbors as well as the setting. Next slide. You can see that this is where proposing. Next slide.
Before you go on this one, this location in the middle where the cutout is, that's similar to the cutout over on the main house in the middle of the map. Sean, can you go to that right there? That section right there. What is that?
There's a fountain there, and there's some utility work. There's some PG&E vaults, and there is some concrete walls and more trees and a little seating area. But every single little dot there's a tree.
Yeah.
We did analyze several different locations. If you hit to the next slide, that's the proposed location, which is a very small area relative to the site. Next slide. We did propose trying to move it over and swing in the driveway. We hit more redwood trees in this location. Next slide.
Of a similar size?
We tried turning it the other direction, similar size. It's a size we felt was required for 4 cars. They do have staff, they have cooks, they have cleaning staff, they hope to have nannies. Again, this is a family with the intent of raising a family, a large family at this compound. Next slide, please. These other locations, we ran across more trees. The place we picked impacted the site with trees the least. Keep going, please. This is again the same location, tree 1 and 2 and 3. 3 is a split tree, which the arborist felt could be removed on its own merit. 4 and 5 are the ones encroaching. Next slide, please. Moving this structure right or left, next slide, would affect either 4 or 5. And so to mitigate the impact of these trees, we decided to put the pad on grade with root barriers. So the goal is to avoid any impact with any roots. So even though we're encroaching it, the goal is to top set and protect the trees. In fact, we think it would be, very safe for the trees to do that. Next slide. This is an on-site view of the existing gravel road that we're ostensibly turning to concrete, with exception of the front end. I respect the commissioner's comment that it could be scaled down, but it's a very small area for a very large lot that does not have a garage, doesn't have covered parking, and doesn't have on-site parking. We think that this size is appropriate. You can see tree 4, and you can also see that it's so wooded. If you remove tree 1 and 2, you wouldn't even notice the wall of green behind it. Keep going, please. This is the split tree. You can see all the trees to the right. Trying to locate the parking in any other location would impinge these trees. You can also see the top of the tree, the crown of this tree is also impacting the other crowns of the trees and potentially impeding their growth. In fact, our arborist made a comment that this is so wooded that the trees should be looked at from a forestry perspective and not just an individual tree perspective, meaning that sometimes thinning out the forest is better in a big picture than just looking at it as a one tree removal kind of scenario. Next slide. This is the civil view. You can keep kind of rolling through these. It's just kind of animated. You can see, just too much clicks there, Sean, sorry, all the green. These are all the trees in the area. We're just trying to center the parking, just keep on going. There's all kinds of trees. Keep on clicking, you'll see green kind of keep on popping up. These are all the trees on the site in the area. The goal is not to take away the beauty and nature of this park-like setting, but just provide some necessities that these homeowners need. And then these are the distances to the trees. Again, you can see those are the trees that are encroaching the TPZ. Next slide. This is our next slide. This is where we're going to top set the concrete. This is the plan provided by the architect, and our mitigating suggestion to not impact the trees in the TPZ. It's just an on-grade concrete slab for all weather use. In closing, this is an aerial photo. You can see those 3 trees right there. In conclusion, it's our view. We don't obviously ask everyone to share our view. We hope you do, that this will not create any impact to the neighbors, to the town, or to the property. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, actually, I did.
Go ahead.
Sean, can you go back to the first site plan?
Yeah, the map, the big map.
Oh, sure, the original site plan?
Yeah. I have a second question. So while Sean's looking
Okay.
for the site plan, I understand why you would do concrete. I wouldn't be a fan of that in this, I mean, there's landscaping all around this, and so to cover this in impervious coverage, I understand why, but it's not something that I would really do. But let me ask my other question here. So this is 34 feet wide, and tell me how the cars get out.
It's just a very simple earth berm just to drive from the gate to or the gravel that's already there from the gate.
No, I'm talking about they're parked. How do they get out?
They turn around or they
How do
back
they
out.
turn around?
Well, that's why we wanted 4 cars. We don't know that it's going to have 4 cars all the time. The intent is that.
But
we
it has
have
4
the
cars. How do they turn around?
They don't. They have to back out. But when there's not 4 cars, there'll be ample room to turn around. We try to make it as small as possible. The goal was not to make it larger for turnaround. This is the smallest we felt we could make it for 4 cars. I don't know that 4 cars will be there every single time. Currently, we expect 2 cars to be there most of the time. With 2 cars, they can easily just pull in and turn around at 3-point turn.
Yeah, I'm curious how public safety would feel about these cars backing out.
We spent a lot of time with the architect, and we're not that concerned about someone backing out of a driveway as they typically do. We could enlarge it and make it wider, but we really don't want to touch 3, 4, 5. We really wanted to stay away from making it any wider. We wanted to keep a 10-foot setback to the right. So we didn't want to move it both for the setback and the tree. And so we just feel we'd rather have some consternation in getting it out than impacting the park and the trees anymore. But it's a valid comment, but we spent a lot of time with the architect and feel this is the best route to go.
How many cars could park there now with the way it's?
Probably one. maybe
Really?
two.
When I looked at it, it looked like 3.
It's.
I
picture
mean,
can
they
be
have to
deceiving.
coordinate their leaving, but
Yeah, the picture can be deceiving.
no, I meant when I visited the site.
We know maybe 2. I don't think 3 could park in there. Certainly if 3 did, you would have to pack them in and have people pull out, have others pull in.
Right,
I think you probably could. The gravel is not sustainable for long term.
right. I got
And
that.
certainly centering this and aligning it the way it is much more conducive for its purpose.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, thank you. Anyone else here to speak on the item? Yes, ma'am.
I'm Linda Grossman, and I live at 80 Parker Avenue. Parker and Euclid are parallel.
Yeah.
Parker and Euclid are parallel,
Right,
and so I live directly behind
right.
on one of the smaller lots. I didn't get the letter until late Monday afternoon,
Okay,
and I didn't have time to look at the plans. So I'm sorry I killed all those trees by sending a letter and having copies.
Right.
My only question would be, does it have to be an impervious strata? Because we already, I mean, our aquifer needs all the trickle down it can have.
right. Yeah.
So since it's on the Euclid side, it won't impinge on us at all.
Right.
But all of the exceptions that have been made for that property, those still remain stuck in my craw.
Right.
Because there have been 5 owners of this property, and lots of changes. So,
Right. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
the detail on the letter too. It was very thorough. Thank you.
well, we've been here a long time.
You've been taking notes, clearly. All right, we did get that. We did that letter. All right, any other individuals on this item? Anyone online, Sean? All right, then I'll go ahead and close the public hearing section and bring it back for the discussion and action as appropriate of the commission. Okay, so you want to start?
I'm not a fan of redwood trees, so I understand that they're part of the heritage ordinance, but it doesn't bother me to actually take them out. But I agree with the last witness that I'd be much more amenable
Speaker.
to this. Excuse me, the last speaker.
You've been spending too much time in court.
An impervious, impervious surface, I think would be much more appropriate here than concrete.
Right.
Excuse me, a permeable surface.
And there are surfaces like that you can walk on easily rather than just rocks. Right. All right. Any other comments?
But just to clarify, the permeable, the trees would have to come out regardless.
If we were,
Yes.
if we were to approve that law, I was looking at it from the standpoint of not approving it and just putting pervious surface on what's there, but yeah, you're right. If
Okay.
Yeah.
to go for the pad size with a different surface, it still would have to, the trees.
Trees would
come
still
out.
have to.
Right.
Yeah.
Bob, did you have something?
Well, the property's unbelievable to see. I mean, it's like a jungle. There's trees everywhere. And so the smaller, the ones with the red madrone, I think they're spectacular. I'm like Tom, I'm not a fan of redwood trees, and wouldn't be the end of the earth. I tend to agree with our contractor speaker that most people would know they were gone. However, I think I would prefer to see it scaled back. I prefer to see a permeable surface, and prefer to see only the twin forked tree removed. That'd be ideal, I think.
And that, what that number is, which one is that?
Three,
That's-
is that three? That, the one that's been approved?
Yes,
So which,
it's number three.
Number
Number
three.
three is the one that Sally said could
coming out,
come
right?
down.
so the twin is coming out, right?
Yeah.
All right.
I do want to say that a part of the application, I did not see the alternative locations. In their letter, they stated that they didn't want to look at any of alternative locations. So I wasn't able to review that for alternative locations or even look at other locations where a driveway could go on the lot. So I wasn't able to review that because they didn't want to explore the alternatives. So I don't do that for the applicant.
Well, I think the location, if you're gonna put parking in there, the location's ideal. It's right inside that gate. The gate's existing. You don't have to change anything. It's kind of tucked in the corner of the lot. Nobody's gonna see the cars. It's the right location.
Well, that's,
Anything else is gonna involve
right.
taking down stuff and driving over stuff. It's, you
Right.
know.
And the other thing too, it goes back to my earlier question about if you had a house on that property and divided and put houses there, that would be your driveway right through there. So, you know, go ahead.
So the speaker that spoke is not Linda Grossman, correct? Oh, you are? Okay. All right. So this was her letter.
Yeah.
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 So with three coming out, and Bob alluded to it earlier, and reworking the site, I mean, how possible is that with just eliminate three from the picture there and say, wow, is that now a usable site? Can you reshape it? Does it have to be rectangular? What are the options from kind of using the same gate, getting rid of three, and still working around one and two if at all possible?
You're saying getting rid of number three, tree number three.
Well, three's gonna be
Three's
gone
gone,
anyway, right?
Right.
I mean, it's already been approved. So how do we, is there a possibility of working with that and still saving the other two trees?
It seems like there's a slot there where the third car up has a opening to go through that area. So if that area was extended, that would seem like that would be enough. Now, it creates some logistic issue in terms of how to get out, I think, which is, you know, like how do you back out without making sure that you're choreographed properly? But it seems to me that one tree being removed creates enough space to do something.
Like if you were to reshape it instead of just looking rectangular, round it off or something like that. I'm not an architect, but, and then look at maybe TPZ exceptions for the trees that might be impacted by that, but still be able to save the trees. I'm not, Sally, does that sound reasonable? I have no idea, but just,
I mean, yes, that's more reasonable. I just can't recommend the removal of trees
right, I get
that are
it.
healthy. So if they came back with a TPC or something, it would be something I could look at.
All right, or are you ready for a motion then? Somebody had? I'm agreeing with you. I think that there's so much space on that property to say that this is the only way we can go on this property. And plus I think it has to be sort of situated for what it might be used for in the future. And a curved driveway there, you know, some kind of curving of that entry area would be appropriate anyway. It looks like that would be space for that. I couldn't see that far in to tell if what's behind that area beyond where the top two cars are parked. Yeah, go ahead, come on up. I'll open up the public hearing one more time. Go ahead.
I want to say that I appreciate, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, I
Keep
wanna
the
say
map up. Keep the map up.
That I appreciate the discussion, and they're all really good points. They're points that we spent a lot of time on, and I think where the position you're in that's difficult is you don't have the architect and us, the owner and the arborist, going through ideas and cars and what's the future use and going back and forth of all those different, I can assure you everything that you've discussed, we have. In respect to an impervious surface, we're not planning to put drainage on this, so all the water would sheet drain onto the site and still be recharged into the groundwater. It's not going into a storm drain system, is ostensibly in a way pervious. Also, there is no other paving on the site besides the house and the pool. There is no garage, so we're well below maybe 50% below the coverage area for a site like this, even more so with the main house. So I respect those comments. I really appreciate those comments. But I don't think that this impacts the recharging of the groundwater in any way, shape, or form. With respect to turning it, there is an oak tree there. There is a canopy there. There is a walkway there that we wish to maintain. It does make logistics a lot harder to actually make kind of a hammerhead in terms of turning in and turning around. It doesn't really make it that conducive. Over all the things that we batted around, we took the simplest, easiest approach, and that property that we think will not be impacted by losing those trees. We don't want to lose trees either. We tried to stay away from the oaks. So we don't think it's an imposition for what they don't have on this site. They don't have a garage. They don't have on-site parking, don't have covered parking. We don't think 2 trees. And we're offering to mitigate. We're happy to mitigate with more trees if we feel it's necessary.
You're
We
good with
offered
trees.
9 trees.
You're
Our arborist said, no, you have a forest. You don't need a bigger
Yeah,
forest.
you don't
It's
need more
within the
trees.
forest. So, I mean, as a request of common, use of the land, I do know trees take a lot of precedence. They are here first, but I don't think this is a huge imposition to take it that far. So,
All right,
So-
thank you.
thank you so much.
Since you're up there, I do have a question. So 3's coming out,
Yes.
and looking at 1 and 2, there's no way to, as Bob alluded to, scaling back the pad to 3 spaces. Would that be a possibility?
If this is a temporary house where the owners plan to, not think of it for generations with their children and their family and additional parking and staff, I would say yes. I don't think 4 cars without a garage is, I don't think you put other
Wait,
cars anywhere else.
There's no parking in front of the other house, in front of the
There is,
main
but there's
house?
a long driveway. It's the old style
Right.
layout. The driveway is long. It goes to a garage. The
Right.
garage is actually a gym. They park on that driveway. You're already backed up. You have one gardener come and that whole line is backed up. It's not a site flush with parking, on-site parking for something that's 2 acres.
But there is
Right.
street parking.
Right, in terms, all right, besides free parking, yeah.
Yeah, it's good parking because that's the only place I parked when I saw the property.
Yeah.
All right, anything else? Any question, any other questions?
So much.
Any other comments? All right, thank you. Did you have anything else to add? Anyone else? Okay, I'll go ahead and close the public comment. I'm ready to go with anybody's ready to make a motion. I don't see the reason for approving this one, but I also agree that Redwood's getting away a later term than any ever. So go ahead, somebody make a motion.
I'll make a motion. I agree with Bob's thinking that, I think that it could be scaled back, in my opinion. And there could be a way to kind of rework things a little bit. And again, not a professional in the business, but it is a rather large site. So I'll make the motion that I move that the Planning Commission deny the heritage tree removal permit HTR 2400001 at 37/53 Euclid Avenue for the removal of 2 19-inch coast redwoods and the PTPZ exception PTPZ 24-00003 at 37/53 Euclid Avenue for 2 coast redwoods ranging in size from 21 to 26 inches.
I have a question for Sally. Sally, would that allow for a smaller pad to be built without our approval going forward or not?
Question. Thank you.
I mean, I don't know what the 21-inch tree is, what the health of that tree is. The only trees I looked at were those 3 trees, 1, 2, and 3.
Yes.
So I wasn't even looking at the other trees. I don't have an inventory on the other trees. so I
other
can't
trees-
speak on that here.
What number of trees are you talking about? 5 or 6?
I mean, if you're gonna make the pad horizontal, you're talking about?
No, I'm talking about if they shorten the pad and leave it in the spot where behind.
If they shorten the pad, then they will have less TPZs. Tree number 4 probably wouldn't need a TPZ exception.
If they shorten the pad to be in front of 2.
If they shorten the pad to be in front of 2, then they would need a TPC exception for the 19-inch redwood, tree number 2.
And if it's a 3-car pad, they'll need a TPZ exception for trees 1, 2, and 5. But 3 still goes.
Yes.
Right, okay, so that would work. They have 3 car. Okay, so the housekeeper uses the main driveway. All right,
Second.
okay, moved and seconded. Have a roll call, please.
Commissioner Tonelli,
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Commissioner Bryant,
Yes.
Commissioner Polito,
Yes.
Commissioner Levison,
Yes.
and Chair Lane.
Yes.
Caught me
All
off
right.
guard there, Sean.
So the follow-on to that is, Sean, let's give the applicant the overview of what their options are. Do you have a, go ahead, you're gonna do it? Yeah. The options are for an appeal to the council.
Oh, yes. The applicant can appeal to the city council. There's a process for that, and I'll be glad to walk the applicants through that process after the meeting.
All right, great. Thank you. All right, then Bob, you just handed out something that, Brittany, is this yours?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure it's an official document that we're actually allowed to read. All right, good.
Sean, can you go ahead and pull up the presentation
Hmm.
for our next item?
All right, so then that's it. Let me make sure that we have this announced properly. Just a minute, let me pull up my agenda real quick. This is item number, give me a number, Sean. Here it is.
4C.
Item number C. All right, item number C, we're gonna go through the resolution recommending the amendments to the Atherton General Plan and Municipal Code and to implement the 2023, 2031 Housing Element and Zoning Code updates. We'll start with the staff report. Brittany, you've got it.
Sure. So Brittany Bendix, Town Planner. Sean is going to bring up the presentation for me just in a moment. I've passed out printed copies to the commissioners, and then I've left a stack here on the console table underneath the video screen for any members of the public that want to have their own copy. So we are here tonight looking at the housing element and zoning code updates. Our general agenda tonight is to cover quite a bit of information. We do have roughly 47 slides to get through. So I will try and keep a quick pace to get through so we can get to comments and questions because I know you'll have them. But we will be looking at some CEQA and development review responses to comments that we've received, an overview of the draft standards that went out at the last meeting, some case study analysis that was also included in the staff report for tonight's hearing. Then we're going to start talking about the standards that we see in conflict with the case studies that we looked at. Tom Ford, my colleague from M Group, also has some slides on upper level privacy standards that were requests for clarification from the last hearing. And then what we'll get to is our recommended motion, which we've written out for commissioners, just from a pure following staff's recommendation standpoint. I know some of you may have your own set of recommendations, but these are the things that staff would like to see captured. Next slide. So jumping into CEQA, what I really want to focus on tonight is kind of the delineation between what happens in the CEQA analysis and what is considered, and then what goes into the development review process. I noticed a lot of the comments that we've received and questions that came up at the previous hearing have to do kind of with what happens when and how much do you know now when we're looking at programs as part of the housing element and crafting development standards versus what we see when we actually have a development application in front of us to review. So in a programmatic evaluation, the way that we've done CEQA and the ISM&D, it's really anticipating the largest possible build out under standards that could be approved tonight. For example, CEQA thinks that the RM10 standards are applying a flat 40-foot tall ceiling height, but what we've actually proposed to you is more of sculpted, with 40 feet being the max peak. That could change, but the upper limit that was studied in CEQA was 40 feet. So that's kind of an example of how that largest build out is studied in CEQA. The next thing is it identifies existing policies and standards. When you read through the initial study, a huge chunk in each of the 20 different CEQA factors that was analyzed was doing kind of a literature review almost in some sense of all of the plans and programs that are out there that the future development would have to adhere to, and whether or not those were sufficient to mitigate any potential impacts. And then, of course, it identifies the potential impacts and apply mitigation measures. And that's what you'd see in the ISMND as the close of every section, that there's a mitigation measure. It's called out like air quality is AQ1. And then in our mitigation monitoring reporting program, which is one of the attachments, that's what we would see at the development review process, where we'd go through and kind of do a checklist of, is this applicable to this project? Yes, no. At what point is analysis required? Submittal of application, perhaps ongoing throughout construction, or sometimes there's even monitoring that goes through the actual use and implementation of the project. So that's what we use the MMRP for. With development review, of course, then we have more refined detail of actually what's being proposed. We're not just looking at, okay, well, the max density is 10 dwelling units per acre. Maybe we actually have an application that's only submitted 6 dwelling units. Or where exactly is the ingress and egress onto adjacent roads proposed. We then apply the policies and standards that we've developed or that are already existing, and this could deal with frontage, ingress and egress, bike and pedestrian programs, or intersection improvements. And then we also apply the mitigations. And then, of course, if the project exceeds what was studied under the housing element ISMND, additional CEQA could be required unless there's a way to exempt it per state law, because the state has issued a lot of laws that allow for developments to circumvent the CEQA process. Next slide, please. So what I'd like to do is kind of delineate how this is distinguished through a few of the CEQA topics. The first example that I want to touch on is transportation, air quality, greenhouse gas. And I'm using the Bay Road sites here, specifically the one at the corner of Bay and Ringwood as an example to go through. So here we've started with the CEQA programmatic evaluation from the housing element. There are a variety of mitigation measures that would apply to this project. The first one from a transportation perspective is Tran 1, which requires a VMT analysis. And that's what we can get into something that we discussed a little bit at the last hearing and what I put in the staff report, these tier 1 through 4 measures. The next set of mitigation measures that I want to call out are air quality.
Can you decode VMT?
I'm sorry?
Can you-
Sorry, VMT, vehicle miles traveled.
Okay, thank
There
you.
are a lot of acronyms up here.
Yeah.
TRAN just stands for transportation because that's coming from the transportation section of the initial study, mitigated neg deck ISMND analysis that we provided. Moving forward, I have up here AQ1, AQ3. Those are both air quality related mitigations, and GHG is a greenhouse gas related mitigation. Those are addressing air quality and greenhouse gas reduction strategies. I'm particularly wanting to call out the greenhouse gas mitigation measure because there were concerns that the air quality associated with traffic wasn't really addressed. And actually that gets captured in an entirely different section. That's the greenhouse gas section of the ISMND. And so I do want to point out that it's there. So then an application comes forward, what happens? Atherton is going to review it, and there are going to be studies that are submitted at application where it has to demonstrate compliance with all of those mitigation measures that I just mentioned. In addition, there is the City and County Associated Governments of San Mateo, or CCAG, which requires review of anything that any project that proposes over 100 daily average trips. So on its own, the property or any one individual property developed at 10 dwelling units per acre is not likely going to trigger 100 daily average trips. But if we were to see a project that synthesized or combined multiple lots, it could get up there. So I do want to call out that that then would happen. Another interesting consideration about that specific lot, that you can kind of apply it based to the other Bay Road properties, is that county would require review for the property, or county review would be required because of the access onto Ringwood. So that's something that we would route to the county for consideration if there was ever any changes to the existing access on Ringwood proposed. And then similarly, any sort of access changes to Bay Road would require review by Menlo Park's Public Works Department. And so that's working directly with the traffic engineer to look at what makes sense on that project. From there, we kind of circle back to the CEQA analysis where the recommendations, where this review then provides recommendations on the specific VMT reduction strategies that would apply to the project. So there are a couple things. One thing that was mentioned in the ISMND is that the city of Menlo Park has identified a need to signalize the intersection at Bay Road and Ringwood. That hasn't yet happened. So a project coming in as a VMT reduction strategy could contribute either financially or through physical development to the implementation of that. Another example is Menlo Park and the county have a joint study that's currently ongoing with a draft analysis that was released in February of this year, looking specifically at congestion improvements to Ringwood and Coleman. There is I believe it's an elementary school off of Coleman, and so that intersection in particular is of concern for safety and congestion impacts. That study recommended a multi-use path along Ringwood that would cost an estimated $8 million. So this study is just identifying potential improvements. It's in draft form. It's really serves an example of how there are ongoing joint efforts by city, the county, and then generally funded too in part by ABAG and MTC. ABAG is the Association of Bay Area Governments, and MTC is the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. That all kind of funnel into not just allocating the RENA requirements per each jurisdiction, but then looking at the overall traffic flow in an area, in a region, along jurisdictional borders to ensure that improvements are funded. But then again, the project could get comments saying that you need to help fund this multimodal path along Ringwood as part of your VMT reduction strategy. So that's not to say that's exactly what's going to happen, but that's how you start with CEQA mitigation measures and development review standards. And during the development review process, there is coordination between all of these different actors to try and prioritize what the improvements are. So how does the Planning Commission of Atherton participate in that? You could assert your own, the town's own priorities in that VMT process. So we, for example, will be revisiting the bike and pedestrian master plan with an update that is just barely getting kicked off. That's probably something that's going to move forward in 2025. That's something that we can incorporate into a statement to assert this would be a preference for a VMT reduction strategy. Another way you could do that, if you hear public commentary relative to specific concerns about coordinating with the school districts, you can come up with that as an identified priority for what a developer should focus on when they come in. So that's typically how that gets.
So Brittany,
addressed.
I know what you're doing here was going over every slide. What I'm concerned is that we'll be so long that people who came to speak on the items won't get to hear what they wanted to know about and some of the conditions and some of the setback standards and things. So if you can give us any high points and if the commissioners have any specific plans, the questions on the next 3 slides,
Sure.
then we can, because this is go
The
ahead.
big one that I wanted to go through thoroughly because it's received kind of the most attention, but I can kind of pick it up.
Right. All right, go ahead.
Sure. So next slide. So the next slide I would talk about is using noise as an example. This was something that we heard. There was concerns about that the noise was only looked at for a very short period of time of day. That is specific to a short-term noise analysis. There was also a long-term noise analysis that looked at three days and averaged out what the noises were during that time period. But ultimately, when development review comes forward, we look at, there will be a study that's required for certain properties. We'll look at the soundproofing and any sort of noise attenuation methods that the project has included. And then moving forward on an ongoing day-to-day basis, that project will still have to adhere to the Atherton noise ordinance, whether it's single family or whether it's not, or whether it's multifamily. Next slide. Generally, overall, with land use compatibility, aesthetics, and privacy, all of this really hinges on what comes out of the development standards and how compatible that is. And that's why we're going through a public process to kind of assert that so that there is some continuity with the general plan and how that views harmonious development. Once the town has established standards, of course, those would be reviewed. And then just kind of asserting that for landscaping, there is a landscaping ordinance that requires maintenance and ongoing, like the general maintenance and perpetuity of any sort of required landscaping. Next slide. All right, at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Tom Ford, who will go through the draft
And
standards.
do we have do we have a city map of the parcels that we're looking at overall, also, so that everybody has a view of the big picture that we're talking about in terms of the impacted properties and where they are relative to the town? If you do, then let's pull it up and we'll get to it when you find it. But I think it's important that everybody sort of sees the big picture as well as the detail here. So Sean, if you can find that, when you do, let us know and we'll pop those up at an appropriate time.
So this is a good place to stop. There's two motions that we need to make. And so my recommendation would be that we deal with CEQA in the negative deck
Right now?
right now.
Okay.
Because
Is
she
that-
just went through it.
All right, does that make
I
sense?
would agree
to-
with that.
Yeah, does that make sense, Brittany?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, that.
So
makes
then
a
at
lot-
this point, we
so
would
this is
want
this is
to
about whether we covered
open
the
it
right
up for
things
any
or not.
questions on CEQA
Right.
and then
that-
public
that ain't the
comment
approval of the plan.
and then do the motion.
Well, basically, we're saying in this motion is that we have laid out the process for identifying all the issues on any individual property every time a proposal comes up, and also outline what the process is overall for all major processes. And what we're saying is that we didn't miss anything at this stage. Then we're going separately into the discussion of what might be the standards for each one of these properties.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Does that make sense to everyone?
Yes.
All right,
I'm not sure what you said.
all right. This is.
I think it's very important. I don't think the people sitting at this counter are in a position to argue with the professionals that did the CEQA analysis.
Right. Well, what I'm saying is that we're authorized, we're approving the CEQA analysis that they've outlined. And then we'll separately go into the development standards.
So do you need to open the floor?
Yeah, let's go ahead. Is there anyone here to speak on the CEQA standards? Yeah, CEQA, their CEQA proposal? So, go ahead. All right, go ahead. I'll open the public hearing comment.
And I would like to advise you that
Go ahead and say your name one more time in front of the mic.
John Riddle, R-I-D-D-L-E.
Yeah, I already know who you are, John. I just want to make sure you're on record.
The CEQA standards require certain minimum specifications that they have to be addressed. The proposal and the CEQA study that's been presented does not address all the issues. There are great omissions that have been left unresponded to. A lot of those were pointed out in response, and there was no reply to our response. There was no response to our reply.
Mm.
You will be in litigation for years. I can assure you, there will be lawsuits arising out of this that will stop all of this from going forward. And the idea that you want to do this now, initially, the proposal was to meet certain plans and goals and specifications. A study was undertaken to do that.
a great deal of time and energy was done by people who are knowledgeable. They identified 17 properties that were appropriate, that met these standards and goals. When those were removed from the proposal, out of the middle of the night comes this idea of 4 properties along Bay Road. Whether it's because they weren't in West Atherton, I don't know what the exact reason was, but it was capricious. It had no basis in fact. All of these properties absolutely don't meet any of the goals and standards that were set by the town. They don't have anything that meets public transportation, on-site or on-street parking. They don't, the traffic control, they're already violating the VTMs, and they're going to get worse. And there is no way you have privacy, noise. They're concerned with the noise during construction. That's one issue. But you're talking about a lifetime of 10 to 14 families 50 feet away from you, looking down from 40 feet into your property. This is not keeping harmonious, consistent policy and environment that you buy when you get into Atherton. That was what the directions were. You want to keep the consistency of the Atherton lifestyle that people had. That's all we're asking for. And there is no way that these Holiday Inns that are going to be put in there, that are at least twice as big as anything else that is in Atherton in Lindenwood. There's nothing that has 20,000 square feet with 10 to 14 families looking down on the property. And Menlo Park, they're talking about the 18 homes per acre in that location. They are small little homes. There's not 18 of them on an acre where you have a huge building. It makes no sense. There's no consistency there. They're talking about having other multiple dwellings on Bay Road. They're a mile down the road. They're at the intersection of 101 and Bay Road. There is going to be a lawsuit for this capricious and arbitrary selection of these homes.
All right, thank you.
And I can assure you that the idea that, yes, we've had this mitigation ideas that have gone forward that don't mitigate the conditions. There are acknowledged conditions out there that don't meet the requirements. And there is no response to what their proposal is to reduce these.
Thank you.
They have no basis in fact.
We'll come back to
I
that.
will then talk after this, but you people are reasonable, intelligent individuals, and you're here volunteering your time to try and do what's right for the people of Atherton. We are people of Atherton also. I was a law school professor for a number of years, and one of the courses I taught was trial advocacy. And there they would have the students put on trial, and we would then send it out to a jury. The jury would talk among themselves, and we were able to videotape and watch this. They didn't understand the law or all of these ideas of the SUCO requirements, but you know what?
I need
They
to-
would do what's right.
All right, we're in the process of doing that, so I need to cut you off now and have the next speaker come up. So thank you.
Have the next speaker come up. I'd also like to say that we didn't receive any of this information from the town until 10 minutes before this meeting today, so we haven't had a chance to review it.
All right, thank you. All right, next up. Getting a better mic.
Hi, my name is Jane Garrett, and I live on Bay Road in Menlo Park. And I'm sorry that I didn't get organized with my neighborhood, the Flood Triangle neighborhood, to respond during the appropriate response time, which I think ended maybe at the end of July. I object to your plan to put your housing problem on my street. You have decided to put any of the multifamily housing to satisfy what your requirement is for the housing element on the peripheral streets, Menlo Park on Ravenswood, and in Redwood City on Oakwood Avenue or whatever it's called. Um, we have a lot of traffic on the street. That's one of the main concerns I have. And I've read some of the CEQA and the response that you had to the CEQA concerns about traffic. It's my understanding that the traffic that was measured had to be based on what's going on right now. In Menlo Park, there are plans for 1,600 housing units, 1.3 miles from my house, which is across the street from what you are suggesting. You want to put 40 more units. So we have Ravenswood Apartments at Flood Park. We have Flood Park, a county park being renovated, which will create more traffic. The Ravenswood Apartments are 88. They will be using Bay Road and the frontage road. We have drive-through traffic from 101 that comes from Marsh and Willow. We have SRI with 800 units, and we have Sunrise. No, that's wrong. We have Willow Park, which is possibly going to be at Sunset Magazine's
I brought all
site.
those, I brought all those, that information with me, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah.
The one thing I did want to say about the CEQA, since we're talking about that, is there's the vehicle miles traveled right now is 13, and that exceeds what CEQA recommends as being healthy, which is 12.4. And that's without all the development that I just mentioned and without your proposed development. So that concerns me. The mitigation I find offensive. The mitigation you have chosen, picked out of a Menlo Park traffic study to put a light, to change the streets in Menlo Park, and to change the county street of Ringwood. I find that very offensive. That was done in 2019. It had nothing to do with what your proposal is. It had nothing to do with actually knowing what was coming as far as the housing element for Menlo Park as well. So I'm sorry, I'm not used to speaking publicly, but I just think this is not acceptable. And why should we are already doing our share of housing element units have to absorb yours as well.
Yeah. Thank
Okay,
you.
thanks.
Thank you. Somebody else? There was somebody else that raised their hand back there. All right, I'll go ahead. Go ahead.
Anybody on
Yeah, I'll ask that. Sean, is there anybody online? No. All right.
Hi, good evening. I'm Warren Jensen. I'm also a resident of Atherton and live on Frederick Avenue. The thing that I would say, in addition to what's been said already tonight, is just kind of the rule of common sense. You know, Bay Road is not getting any bigger. Ringwood is not getting any bigger. Kids ride their bikes to school down through that entire neighborhood, whether it's going to Menlo Atherton or to the local elementary school. And it just doesn't make sense to clog it up that much more. It is a quality of life issue for all of us. It's a quality of life issue for all residents of Atherton and anyone using those roads today.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Anyone else? There's a couple more. Go ahead.
Just a point of clarification. Are we only talking about public comment for CEQA right now?
Yes.
Okay.
Only the CEQA. Anything else? Yeah.
Good evening. My name is Shadan. I've been a Menlo Park resident for the past 15 years. We live on Bay Road, and I don't have a whole lot to add to what they've already expressed. I just wanted to say we have 2 children in the local public school systems. There are 3 schools in this neighborhood, and our kids, along with 15 other of their friends, we have multiple bike groups that bike. There's a lot of bike traffic.
I've seen them. Yes.
Is my understanding with the housing element that building affordable housing for mixed income, you want to put them near public transportation. And so I haven't been to previous council meetings, but it would make sense to me, and from what a lot of our Flood Park Triangle neighbors, a lot of the families that are in our school system agree with me, is that it seems that this is being put on the very outskirts of Atherton, where Menlo Park is going to be feeling the majority of the impact. Whereas it seems like if we were to if the goal here is for mixed income housing, shouldn't it be near public transportation, which would be closer to, again, I don't know what else has been considered, what other locations, but it seems to me that being near El Camino, where there's public transportation and Caltrain, makes a bit more sense than adding to the already very busy Bay Road area.
Thank you.
That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Was there somebody
Right.
that flashed up that wanted?
There's one more.
That's right. We do have a request to speak from Navneet Dalal, and Navneet, I will ask to unmute you.
Thank you. Good catch.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, okay. Yeah, so actually, I was in the previous meeting also, and we were told that, hey, there is an analysis which would be, these comments would be taken into account. And I did send at least a detailed document because I was looking for what all has been addressed with respect to the SECA analysis. And this is not my profession, but I had to go through the whole of the documents, and there were hundreds of pages, go through each one of them one by one. And one of the things which I would like to point out is that one of the mitigations as raised earlier is that, let's talk about Bay Road, River, Ringwood streets, is that, hey, VMT is already 13, it's higher than the whole of the Bay Area. The town housing itself has the Lindenwood and the Menlo Park areas right behind the Bay Road and between 101. They have a very high children ratio. About 41% of the families have kids in their homes. And those kids have to go to school. This is higher than the San Mateo County average, which is around 30. So it's 10% higher in there. The SECA mitigation was that we will put a red light and we will turn these Bay Road and the Ringwood into left side streets only. However, I haven't seen how any details of that plan. I was hoping to find something like, hey, this is how it would be mitigated. But we haven't found any details there. And so it's not clear to me what we're going to do with the current pedestrian and the bicycle crossing on these things. The streets have minimum widths required. If we have left-hand turns, how are we planning on fitting it? So the comment I want to specifically make is that the mitigation proposed is we'll put a red light, but how does that plan look like is not clear. The second argument, which I will kind of address to Brittany's original point, is that there has been a lot of other constructions happening, and when those happens, this would be not of a big concern. Actually, I'm already.
Oh. All right. All right. All right. Now that's a magic act. That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Go
thank you, thank you.
officially introduce yourself, moving from online to in person. All right.
Yes, yes. No, I wanted to, I wasn't aware that we're going to move the comments so early. So, yeah. So the comment I wanted to make was, we can imagine between 101 and 280, there is no easy way to go through.
Yes.
And maybe 20 years from now, the state of California wants to put a highway there.
Yes.
Along, maybe a highway there. And because they would eventually have to do that thing, we should make a construction plan for 50-story building.
Yeah.
I think I want to push back that this argument that just because X, Y, Z will happen in the future, we can approve these plans, etc., is not, to me, it's not an acceptable argument. The argument has to be what is today there. And with respect to those factors and facts, what is the new impact?
Mm-hmm.
And then make the decision. So I don't know why we would say just because there is some other studies happening, this is okay, doesn't gel to me. And I'm still trying to understand how do we put one extra left lane in these things? How would that work out? Where would bike lanes happen? Where would they go? Pedestrian lanes, where would they go? And the only reason this concern is, as mentioned earlier, my kids also bike 7 and 10 to Laurel Upper and Laurel Lower. They use the same roads every day. You guys can go check it in the morning. There is a white fence and lane, and the cars go super fast.
Yes.
Okay, so I have raised it up with the Menlo Park Police Department also earlier. Nothing happened. So, which is we are saying that, hey, we're going to reduce those bike lanes. What's the plan? I just don't know what the plan is.
Well, hopefully.
And the document itself has two contradictions. There is one contradiction which says the plan is we would have to put bike lanes, pedestrian lanes, other trees, etc., because we want to reduce the impact of air quality and all of these things. And then we say, oops, vehicle would go higher, so we're going to extra red light, we're going to turn this intersection into a different look. So I'm not sure what is we are deciding on in the SECA, and that clarity is missing for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the public comment on this section and bring it back. Brittany, if it's very quick.
Mr. Pluto has indicated that he's not sure that you have the expertise to object to the negative declaration of these experts. You do have that expertise. It's your common sense. And if you use your common sense, you know that they admit that there are violations of the CEQA standards. And you can know that it's only going to get worse, and that the proposals they have to address them, A, are inadequate on their face, and B, don't address a lot of them.
All right,
You
thank
do
you.
have that right to do it.
Thank you.
And,
Thank you.
okay, you know,
I brought you up for a quick point. I wanted to close it off right now so we can get, we have a lot more work to do tonight. All right, thank you. I'll close the public comment section. Brittany, I need you to go over again. So since there is no plan proposed, there's nothing that we can plan for right now, other than the fact that we have a plan to address how a proposal would be handled. Is that?
Essentially correct. We are developing a plan right now. We are saying that whatever comes in needs to then adhere to whatever other plans are out there to really drill down and simplify it. But we don't have anything actually in front of us at this point.
So the first step of this process, and this is always, we used to always go in circles on this in other planning commissions I've been on, is do you have a plan for when a plan is proposed? And the answer is, this is what this step is about. This step is when somebody comes and says, if anyone, first of all, this commission did not approve those properties to be evaluated. It was a city council. As a matter of fact, when if some of you were here, we actually approved some overlay on El Camino Real, which for all the points made makes sense. But that is not the proposal that the town council decided was appropriate. So what now we have to do, the first step of what we have to do is say, if somebody comes up and says, I want to build this here, what criteria do they have to address for us to know whether or not we can even consider it? And coming into it, in some of these properties, yes, there are issues for sure on Bay Road and for other areas. So if we did not have a methodology in place, we couldn't define for people why they didn't qualify. So this first step right here is to put the measures in place for, if you come before us and say, I want to propose this, you have to go through these steps. That's what we're approving. That's what we're reviewing right now for approval or not. All right? No, I'm going to close the public comment section. We get to talk for a little while. All right. So with that, then I'm looking for any discussion on the commission for whatever the next step would be.
Well, next step is
Go
a
ahead.
motion, but I do have one comment. Every jurisdiction in the Bay Area is going through this process right now, and they're all going through CEQA, and every one of those jurisdictions has got a traffic problem. It's Bay Area wide, and it's unsolvable. It's a given. So with that, I'm ready to make a motion.
All right, and I'll add one thing to it. This is nothing to do with anything that this planning commission wants to do. All right, at least I'll speak for myself. It's nothing in 3 different planning commissions over 19 years or 23 years, whatever total it is. I have never been put in a situation where I've been legally mandated to do bad planning. And that's what I feel like we're forced to do right now. Now, the flip side of this is what you see in all these headlines. Somebody buys that property we already had a request on Bay Road property for somebody to come in and says, we'd like to do a builder's remedy on that. Okay, so if we don't have a plan for 10, we're gonna get 40. All right, so again and again, I've said the same thing. Not having a plan that is accepted by the state, by this town, is the absolute worst plan. All right, if you look at Menlo Park, 35 stories or whatever it is, 800 units. Oh, by the way, yeah, we'll make a park in the middle and we'll make some shops and things. That means people comes into the shops. That means people comes into the restaurants. So the reality of this thing is there is not good regional planning going on right now. There's regional mandate to build things. And if we don't have a plan, it's the same thing that's happening in other communities right now. The state will come in and says, okay, that's all right. We'll figure it out for you. Guess what? We're not going to get 10 per acre. We're not going to get 20 per acre. We're going to get 40 per acre. All right. So the most important step that we can have tonight and for the town council is to have a plan that is accepted by the state. That's the first thing. Now, the next step of that is, anybody really want to build with the criteria that we put forth? If not, then our ADU plan has a chance to succeed because we're getting the numbers we want on ADU. The state saying, we don't think that's going to make it. We're beating that plan. But without a plan, the state comes in and says, okay, we have an idea. This one's 35, that one's 45, this whole area on El Camino Real, it'll look like downtown Menlo Park. All right, so I'm sort of going through this overview for those of you who are in this for the first time. No plan gets us the worst possible plan imaginable. So with that, I'll bring it back to the commission for a motion or.
I'm not ready to make a motion. I have a question for Brittany.
All right.
And very brief background, because I was on the city council when we considered lots of areas for multifamily overlays. And virtually everyone, the council said, okay, the residents don't like it, so we're going to remove those from the overlay consideration. And the only reason that the Bay Road properties were in the CEQA analysis is because way back when, in the very first iteration of overlays, there wasn't much pushback, probably because the residents are like I was most of my life. They don't know what's going on. And that's the only reason they were included. And I believe those properties and the neighbors in that area, the property owners on Frederick in particular, deserve the same consideration from the city council that were given to the people on El Camino and the Alameda and on Encinal and everywhere else. And I would also my question to you before I bring up my next point, for the planning commission to recommend removal of those 4 properties, would that be something we would make outside of these 2 motions or make it as a part of the CEQA approval of the negative declaration, et cetera? Where would we do that?
My recommendation is to keep the CEQA analysis just related to the CEQA analysis, and then you would remove the sites from the rezoning, which is part of the second package in motion or resolution.
The next piece.
Because if we don't approve the CEQA, you have to restart the CEQA process.
Yeah, we don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and inherently, even if you can't really take them out of the analysis because they've already been included. So the place to take them out of any sort of forward movement of inclusion in the program would be in the actual program, which would be the rezoning, the housing element. I don't think there's any language specific in the development standards, for example, that deals with the identification of the
Well,
properties.
no, but
So
for example, your starting point for rear yard setbacks for the RM10 is 80 feet, right?
right. And we can I know where you're going.
It
with
can't
this,
happen.
And we can discuss
It-
that
It
when
can,
it gets.
it cannot happen on those Bay Road properties. The starting point really, in fact, on the 999 Ringwood, the starting point's going to be less than 50 feet.
So that's discussion on the second resolution before you tonight. Right now, what we're discussing is the CEQA.
Which is a methodology
Right.
for approval.
So
I'm
what
just
you're
trying
you're
to find out.
generally asking is how to kind of thread the needle of potentially removing sites
That-
from the
yes.
housing element package that's moving forward. You're gonna really want to approach that on the next resolution.
On the,
Second
on
one.
the codes, et cetera.
Yes.
Okay.
And to keep it simple,
I didn't mean to
rather
make
than
that question so
saying, you know,
long-winded.
remove it from the housing element, remove it from the development standards, wherever, just say you want them removed entirely.
Okay.
So,
All right. So you ready?
Yeah.
You make motion?
Yeah. I move to adopt the resolution recommending adoption of an initial study and mitigated negative declaration as revised in July 2024 and the mitigation and monitoring and reporting program that has analyzed and addressed the project's potential project impacts pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call.
Commissioner Bryant,
Yes.
Commissioner Tinelli,
Yes.
Commissioner Polito,
Yes.
Commissioner Levison,
Yes.
and Chair Lane.
All right, yes. All right, do you have that overview map available yet, Sean? Do you have did you find an overview map for us or not?
No,
All right.
I can.
Then let's keep going. Brittany, we're on your slide number what? 8, 7?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, go ahead.
So Brittany, can we just hit the height levels? Otherwise, we're going to be here till midnight.
Yeah. Well, I was anticipating that anyway.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
let's not cover every detail.
let's make sure we understand.
perhaps we can jump to then an overview of the case study analysis, because that's really kind of where we left off in the staff report, and segueing into the issues that we've identified that really need to be worked through the planning commission tonight on this.
All right, and then we can come back if there's any questions from the build-up documents. Is that?
I don't know what you just said, but.
We're gonna start.
Some of your examples are specific to the
That's slide 8.
one property, right? So give
So
us
starting on slide 20, page 10
so we're
of the
right here.
2 slide back.
Thank you.
and
Gonna
forth,
start
yeah.
here, or where are you
Yep.
gonna start? Right here?
At the
Slide 20.
case studies, RM10.
There it is.
All right, hold on, let me look. Let me
Keep
find
it
it.
Actually,
Thank you.
in the spirit of moving this along, can we actually do RM 2040 and get it out of the way?
Let's do it in order. Let's do it. I
Okay.
need,
All right.
We're
we
actually
gotta
focused on
remember
RM10 exclusively for
Yeah,
our
that-
presentation.
let's start on RM10, because I want to make sure that everybody's up to speed as much as they can be, including me. All right, I'm looking for that page, though. I don't see it.
Right here.
All right,
21,
okay.
22.
All right, great, thank you.
Yeah, 21, 22.
All right, thank you. Between the two of you, I can, oh, there I am. All right, thank you. All right, ready?
Okay.
Bob, are you okay? Okay, all right. Go
So
ahead.
good evening.
Yeah, go ahead.
Good evening, Chair Lane and Planning Commissioner. So based on some of the discussion we had at your July meeting, we went ahead and looked at a couple of case studies to do some test assumptions. As Commissioner Bryant said, this will directly get us into a discussion of height. And I think it can also get into what Commissioner Polito was asking for about rear setbacks. So next slide. We looked at a couple of different case studies. In all cases, we were trying to enable 2,000 square foot units, which is the direction we got from you at your July meeting.
Yeah, that seems big to me, but we'll come back to that discussion later on. I mean, I understand why 2,000, but still, that seems big to me. But go ahead.
We're assuming a little bit of a density bonus would happen on most, if not all parcels. We're also assuming that there's a market rate unit that's going to be here. We're trying to be sensitive to the single family context. which is why you see specific requirements for setbacks for properties adjacent to R1. And then we're trying to emphasize or look for in the case studies, parking that was screened or underground. Next.
All right, and where we're talking about market rate units, are we talking about purchase or rent?
Either.
Okay, so market rate in Atherton is going to be $3.5 million.
I won't
Okay.
buy it.
Yeah, three to $3.5 million. Well, the property
Not
is
at 2,000 square feet.
right. Yeah. All right. Good. All right. Thank you. All right.
Actually, on that point, I want to get back. One of the speakers earlier talked about this being low-income housing. This is not low-income housing.
Yeah.
You know, the $2.5 to $3.5 million.
Yeah. Oh, not unless somebody's got a wealthy uncle.
All right.
Okay.
Okay,
All right.
so next. So we identified two case studies. One is one that was recommended at the Planning Commission Town Council study session, the project in Menlo Park called the Marquee, or formerly called the Roger Reynolds site. So we looked at that one, and we also found a project in Pasadena that's more akin to what we were looking at in the big house typology. But it also has pretty large units and is luxury condominiums, as the architect calls it. Next. So I'll just really briefly show a couple of, here's just an overview of the development typology and information for the Roger Reynolds site. Next. Here's how it lays out in plan. So the reason these buildings are numbered is later you'll see, as you saw in your staff report, that we picked up some of these pieces and tried to put them, or did put them on certain sites as a way of doing a test fit with an actual project. Next.
So hang on, Tom. I'm just going to add color as you go through this. So go back to that slide.
So that's an existing property in Menlo Park. That's right off the train
No.
tracks.
Yeah.
Right.
And so M4 here, so all of the parcels in blue, these are townhouses. The parcel M4 is actually duplexes, or it's actually a triplex, but the point is they're 2-story high. They're not 3-story high like all the rest of them.
They are 3 stories.
Setbacks, do you want
Yeah.
to talk about setbacks?
We'll get to you in a minute. All right. So go ahead.
Just to correct you, most of them are 3 stories, but there's a couple that are 2 stories.
Yeah, that's M4. M4 is 2
Four.
stories.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's stepped actually, right? It's stepped and 2 stories, and the others are 3 stories. So because they're next to near properties.
Yeah.
So keep going. These, by
Okay.
the way, were originally sold for around 1.9 million, and they're running about 2.6 right now. So they would be more expensive. The same property in Atherton would be more expensive because the base land is more expensive. Go ahead. So you're not
Next.
going to see a homeless person moving in probably. Go ahead.
Okay, so this other project is in Pasadena. This is actually completely underground parking, and you can kind of see the project is raised a little bit on a plinth. So the parking is underneath. The parking structure is built around those pine trees, and it's 2 stories, but it also uses a sloped roof to get a little bit higher than that. The unit sizes range from 1,800 to 3,500, 3,400. This is a very luxurious project. People have their own dedicated parking spaces in the basement, and they have an elevator that opens at their unit. So I'm not sure how many elevators are in that parking structure, but it's pretty exclusive development.
10.
Pardon me? Yeah, probably. Next. Depends on what floor you get off on. Next. So here's what it looks like. And so you can see up at the top of the parcel, that's where the parking comes in from the street, goes around building B1, and then goes underground. So all of the resident parking is under buildings B1 and B2. The guest parking is along the left side of the parcel there on the at grade. Next.
And the setback on that is really limited, looks like.
Right. So what we did, again, I'm just trying to move, I'll slow down if you want me to,
Right.
but I'm just trying to move this along. We took the Roger Reynolds site, those buildings, we took 3 of them, M1, M3, and M4. M1 and M3 are 3 stories with sloped roofs. M4 is 2 stories with sloped roof. The parking, as at Roger Reynolds, is contained in the envelope of the building, which contributes to a greater FAR. And so this is what it looks like on the site. And this is what it looks like with the proposed, next slide, with the proposed zoning envelope, which is not, these are some earlier slides that we skipped over, but what we did was and this is covered in your staff report, we didn't just have a strict, go up the side 40 feet and there's your zoning envelope. We tried to sculpt it. So there's a 45-degree daylight plane that takes off at 21 feet on the side and the rear, takes it 30 feet on the front. And so what you can see, it's a little hard to see on this slide, but there's just a few places where some of the gables puncture that zoning envelope. But by and large, this, even with the driveway and coming to the garages, it by and large matches what the zoning standards presently are drafted. It's a little over in FAR, and part of that is because the parking is above grade and in the structure. Next. So here's looking at the other, we took the other typology and dropped it on one of the Ravenswood Bay type parcels. This is using what we proposed, and we've heard a lot of pushback on this in the last month. Brittany specifically has heard from a number of people, number of you, about that rear setback in an R1 condition. So this is what it would be. The R1 condition would exist at the back setback, and so the buildable area would be the darker pink color, and the Pasadena case study obviously does not fit on that site. Next. Well, what happens if you don't take, well, here's how it looks in the envelope. Everything's fine in terms of meeting the daylight plane setback and coming, not being within that envelope, except for the issue of not being in the setback in the rear. Next. So what happens if you take that typology and look at it without the R1 stipulation of a rear setback? The project fits. Generally, there's a couple of places where a gable or an eave might poke through, but that's purely a design issue that an architect could solve. And so here's how that looks on this site. Next. So what we started to see, even with a 2,000 square foot unit, go to the next one, please, are a couple of places where we have some conflict. The rear setback for the R1 adjacent parcel is clearly a development constraint to get to a 2,000 square foot unit. There's some design issues that we think are, you probably just saw there are some places where eaves and gables and things poke through, but we think that's a design issue that can be solved. The upper level FAR, for instance, the Roger Reynolds typology breaks our present standard, but we think, again, that can be handled by an architect if we keep with the standard we have. Next. This might be interesting and probably get to the issue that both Commissioner Bryant and the issue that Commissioner Polito wanted to address. We took just building volume and we're using the gross volume, not just 1,000 square feet, but what does it take to build a building? Hallways, stairways, all the circulation space, and the 1,000 square foot unit. So putting it on an R1 adjacent rear setback, 1,000 square foot unit, it kind of fits. The garage is, here's a tandem garage. Garages are allowed in the setback. It's more than 10 feet from the property line, so that would work. It's a detached garage. Next.
Let me ask a question here, Tom, on this one. Go back one, Sean. So, well, it doesn't matter, but the garages here, the square footage of those garages does still count in the FAR, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And it would,
so it's 1,000 plus the garage square footage. It's
right.
not 1,000.
And that's over there.
Yeah.
So total footprint, 13,360 would be all four buildings, the two residential and the two accessory buildings. And we've molded, even though I don't want you to think about these as buildings, they're basically just building volume that we've plopped down there. But we're showing how our existing draft standards would force a little bit of sculpting at the front edge. For instance, we have a draft standard that says no individual can be longer than 55 feet when fronting onto the frontage. And the aggregate cannot go beyond 120, I believe it is. Next. So here's 2,000 square foot unit, just gross volume, looking at sort of a 2-story volume. If you're going to have a detached garage, it clearly doesn't fit. And with the R1 setback, you can't make that requirement either. So it's just something to consider. Next. Let's go to a 3-story volume, 2,000 square foot units with the R1 adjacent rear setback. The gross building volume here is assuming above grade parking, but contained within the building envelope, similar to the Roger Reynolds typology, where you drive in and you go into a garage, it's above grade, so you have to count the FAR. So next, here's the same buildings, but getting rid of that R1 adjacent rear setback. A 3-story building, it puts us over our FAR, again, because the garages have to get measured and they're above grade here. They're part of the building volume, but they're above grade. They're being measured, but the 3 stories does start to fit. Now, this is just purely about volume. It's not really looking into, is this the way to design the site? But it's just showing 1 in 2,000 square foot units. What does the volume put on a site like this? Next. So, and I think Mr. Polito wanted to talk about the R1 adjacent setback. This is a table from the draft standards where anything above 170 feet wide, such as the Bay and Ravenswood parcels, we just assume, we gave it a much larger rear because we were pushing it out. It was a much less front setback. The front setback is 30 feet, which is much smaller than most front setbacks in Atherton. So that's where we arrived at that. So in terms of what we've been looking at tonight, the Bay Ravenswood parcels are basically the top line, 170 feet or over for width. And the Oakwood would be down at the 140 foot or less. Next. That's, oh, why don't I show you this one? Because this is not in your staff report. We started looking, well, so we heard enough, I think in the interim.
We got it here, right? Is this the same thing? Yeah.
We heard, Brittany's been hearing things in the last month, different people, different comments about the 80-foot R1 rear setback. So we have a feeling that that's not going to stand past the, or you're not going to recommend that to the council. So we started looking at a couple of other ones. So what do you do? So the parcel on the left doesn't change. That's an R1 parcel. They have a 60-foot rear setback. They have, I believe it's 30 feet before you have to, the sidewall can go up to 30 feet, I believe. So what we've done here, there is a landscape buffer requirement for new development. I believe the tree is supposed to be 12 feet at planting, 12 or 15 feet at planting. So we show a 15-foot. I think it's supposed to be 22 feet at maturity. On the existing R1, we show like what would happen if those folks, which many people do, have a tree. There might be some additional way to block view. And then over here, I don't know if you can remove your name, Sean, but where it says Sean Manalo, there's a guy standing there, and we show his view plane looking out his window.
He's the blue area on the slide, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So right now, we have a 54-inch minimum sill height standard for you can't do that in a bedroom because you have to have fire egress. But what we did is we're recommending, if you look at the image below, you can see that window is 2-part. So we've written a new standard, which I'll show you on the next slide, where we're assuming the glass piece of the window below 54 inches is opaque. Okay. It's translucent, but it's not transparent. And so this is just kind of how the view of someone from a new development that could be as high as 3 stories adjacent and how close they are. But if you do want to have a discussion amongst yourselves, about that rear setback and what it should be. We're hoping that this might help inform that discussion. And then on the next slide, I think this can be my last one. We just show what that, that's my typo, the widow, it should say window. So this would amend your proposed amendments. And if you go to page 28 of July attachment 9, 8 window detail, we proposed this new standard so that you can either have a 54-inch sill height or anything less than that for any window, even if it's an egress window for a bedroom. You'd still have glass, but the glass below 54 needs to be translucent and not transparent. So we have a lot of slides, but I tried to speed through it for you,
Right.
and I can go
That's-
back to
I
any of them.
appreciate that. I appreciate that.
Speed through any of this
All right,
detail.
questions of staff? Go, you had some?
I don't really have questions. I have comments.
All right, we'll wait for those, right? All right, any questions of staff?
Not right now.
All right, we'll come back. We'll have a bunch after we hear public. Yes. Yes, you have found the map?
While we're waiting, I think the staff report's well done. Tom, I think there's a much better graphics actually as
Okay,
well.
thanks.
So,
Yeah, good.
doesn't mean they're right, but they're much better.
All right. So Brittany, you want to walk through this?
Sure. So this is attachment 10 of the package and shows the revised zoning map. It's actually in here twice. It's on the before and after on one sheet, and then before on an individual sheet and after on its own individual sheet. Really, the red here is indicating the sites that are on the table for the multifamily overlay. One of the critical things that went into the council's discussion last year about the site selection was responding to comments from HCD that the sites generally needed to be dispersed. Moving into the CEQA analysis, really, and from the 2023 adopted housing element, the only sites on here were the Sacred Heart, Menlo College, Menlo School, and 23 Oakwood, which were all kind of at the center of the town. So in addition, the town added potentially Holbrook Palmer Park, the Bear Gulch Reservoir, Menlo Circus Club, all as potential workforce housing additions that could be used, that could use the multifamily overlay as well. And then the properties on Ravenswood Avenue and Bay Road.
So just to think about, there might be another layer of this map that we could do to show the progress, and that's to include a dot where an ADU has been built. So then all of a sudden you start seeing across the community, there's an ongoing, people have talked about, well, why is it only Fringe or whatever? It's all through the community. The ADU thing is a real thing that's really working. And we don't have a map that shows that in addition to this.
Sure. We have a lot of maps in the actual housing element revised text.
Right.
They show vacant sites. They show the SB9 projects that have already gone forward, lots that could be eligible from a size standpoint to convey to HCD that there is space in Atherton to do that. There should be a map that does indicate all of the ADUs, and we can look for that and bring that up if you'd like as well.
I just think.
But we can work on one that consolidates the entire story. I hear
I
that.
want to see a map that shows all the new developments, because people know the part that they know, but when you actually see the map, and we're building we're basing a lot of our success on the ADU model, and that can override a lot of the other things that goes on if we do it right. So having that and show the number of diverse locations that is showing up is important at some point too.
I think the other thing that you can take away from this map is that we've heard that there's, we've talked about the aesthetics and the character also. There are smaller parcels that represent a higher density within the town, even though it's still one lot or one house per lot within the center of the town in the R1B zoning areas within the Parker overlay that's already existing. We heard from a neighbor that lives there tonight. And then there's even a cluster near Los Lomitas Elementary School. And so there is a distribution of smaller scale properties that represent a denser area of Atherton within the town already.
All right, great. All right, so let's have questions of staff. Any questions of staff before I open up public comment? All right. Right, I'll go ahead and open up public comment on, on this item. Go ahead.
I have some questions.
Go ahead and
So
introduce
the-
yourself officially again.
Yeah, hi. I have some questions. The RM10 standard.
Your name, and your name, just for the record, so it's in this part of the
Fair enough.
document too.
RM10 standard, the zoning standard, is it applicable for the entirety of the town, or would we say that different parcels would get, like tomorrow, if we add more parcels, they would get the same standard applied, or would we change the standard at that stage?
And just for the record, it's Navneet Dalal. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Sean. We'll answer that question in a minute, but that's a good question because it is, it's separate from this. It's a follow-on question to what we're doing right now, but we'll answer that in a minute, all right?
Okay.
All right.
Yeah,
All right, thank you. And Brittany, just to be clear, this would be the approval for this, and any changes beyond this would be a major process to change the plan. So the quick answer to your question is, this would be the plan, except for ADU growth. ADU growth would be up to the individual property owner to come forward and say, hey, I want to add an accessory dwelling unit, and I want my parents to live in it, or I want to sell it to a teacher or whatever, or rent it to a teacher. All those go into the numbers that we generate in terms of, and then that's the best prospect for affordable housing in Atherton is an ADU. Because the person doesn't have to buy new land. So you don't have the building of the land property, the property value in there too. All right, anyone else? Go ahead, on the back, and you.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Jensen. I'm at 30 Frederick Avenue. I'm sorry I was late. My plane was very, very delayed getting here,
No,
so.
So you're in a really good mood.
So I tried very hard to get here.
Yeah.
So I've missed some of the discussion and feel like I'm a bit behind the 8 ball, but I have been at these meetings before. I'm trying to understand, it sounds like you cannot take the Bay Road Ringwood properties off the CEQA. You're taking that off the table as of tonight. You're trying to address proposals and a formula to make sure that whatever is put on these potential properties fit into a standard for the town, correct?
Correct. We haven't officially moved on the one property yet, although a couple of us feel that way, but that'll be part of whatever motion comes up. But it's to look at these properties with the idea of how they affect our ability to meet the state standard they're demanding in terms of numbers, hitting the numbers for available housing.
But to clarify slightly further,
Yeah.
we don't want to touch the CEQA analysis.
Right.
We don't want to start over again on the CEQA analysis, even if some of the decisions that went into the CEQA analysis were poor. However, Planning Commission could recommend to the City Council that they remove the Bay Road properties or any other property that's included in the CEQA analysis.
So that can still happen later at a later
Well, we
date.
can recommend it, but the actual final decision will be at the town council level. And the town council was the one that added the Bay Road properties to the list. We didn't. So what you may find is that even when we recommend it, the reasons that they chose to add it will be discoverable in their hearings.
Right. So I wanted to just make sure that we have on record that I feel like our neighborhood is being bombarded by change. Not only, I think we've all heard over and over again, our safety concerns, our traffic concerns, our property value concerns, the quality of life concerns, but we are also getting solicitations for selling our properties on
Yes.
Frederick Avenue
Yes.
to divide our lots, which I feel like it's an adjacent concern with what we're talking about right now, that we're encroaching on the Lindenwood neighborhood and changing the real nature of this neighborhood. And it's coming at us from a lot of different angles right now. And I just want to make sure that that is really part of the consideration when we're talking about now adding 3-story, 40-unit buildings on the entrance to our neighborhood.
Yeah, developers are coming, this is on SB, that's because of SB 9. There's another set of laws in addition to the requirements for us to come up with a plan for the growth that is saying any homeowner can split their properties in two and build duplexes on each side as long as they live in the property. And that is a state law now that, you know, when it comes to us, we have to sit there and say, we can't stop that. So what's happening with developers, the developers saying, hey, there's a lot of property in Atherton. Let me see how many people would just go for it. So we're all seeing that.
Yeah.
But that does need.
Well, let me answer this because it's important to understand this, because Chairman Lane is absolutely correct, but it's actually even worse than that. And so you have to understand that, we all have to understand that what's written in the zoning code on black and white is, you have to think of it as that's the nominal code. It's not the real zoning code any longer. And so in your example on Fredericks, it's not just that the state has said that any of those property owners can, on either side of you, across the street from you, they can split their lot. It doesn't even come, if they request to do that, it doesn't even come to the planning commission or the city council. It's automatic. It has to meet certain criteria. It's not just that. It's also the fact that in each one of those split lots, each owner is allowed to put in a 3-bedroom house in the backyard or in the side yard within 10 feet of your property line. It doesn't come to us. It doesn't come to the city council. It's automatic. It's automatic if it meets the criteria. They can also have a 1-bedroom apartment that's attached to the main unit. So in essence, there's 3 families on half the lot. So there's 6 families on any R1A lot. That's the new zoning.
By state code.
Right.
Yeah.
So you can't.
But when you're, I realize that, and it is very scary.
Yeah, it is very scary.
But when you also layer on these 4 properties that are right at the entrance, where it is literally the only entrance into the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And you have all those children going to 2 different schools and everything else that you all know about. Does that come into play with what's happening here with these CEQA properties?
So again, just to challenge this a little bit. So what you're talking about right now, and we're going to come back and talk about this number, but right now we're talking about 10. So let's say you're on the side of Fredericks that backs up to the units on Bay Road. So what we're talking about is the difference between 6 units if someone on Bay Road went through and did everything that I just said. Actually, it can be 7 units if there's a 3-car garage that they maintain. They can put another ADU on top of that. So 6 or 7 units on that parcel behind you. That's what the state allows. And what we're talking about with the RN10 is 10 units. And so 4 additional units. And in fact, on Bay Road, it's not even
Plus
that.
density bonuses.
Yeah. Well,
Exactly.
no, I'm not talking about that now. I don't want to, that's a whole
Just
different
gets
conversation.
Gets even worse is my
Yeah.
point.
I know it
So-
does.
Yeah, so
But we're talking about 9 units.
What we're trying to do is do 2 things. One, make it so the state says, yeah, you guys just barely made it over the bar to get accepted. That's all we're trying to do, is be accepted. And then what I'm hoping for is that our strategy around ADUs actually gives us the numbers where we actually meet the estimate of what we were required to deliver in terms of units without ruining the town. And now that thread is really small, because we basically have gone a year and change longer than the original timeline to have a plan. And we're getting more, and because of things, I mean, you weren't here when I highlighted these articles.
I've been catching
yeah,
up on all of them.
Yeah, well, you can read mine if you want. But I mean, because of all what's happening is all around us, builder's remedy. So there's there's the SB 9, there's the requirement by the state to have a certain numbers for every community, which is way above whatever every community wanted. And then also, if you don't make the plan, then builder's remedy trumps everything. So the builder's remedy is, I feel like putting 50 there and you guys don't have a plan, so I can build 50. No plan means I can do whatever I want. So it's builder's remedy, it's state mandate, and then it's trying to preserve a town in the middle and throughout that. And
So for us here on Frederick and in this corner of town,
right,
we're low man on the totem pole right now,
Yeah.
where you have taken off
We
off
haven't-
the table
We-
for
we-
El
this planning
Camino
commission
and
did
all
not-
of those
did not
things.
take anything.
Well,
We're-
the town has
Yes.
taken that off and
You
it's part
shouldn't
of
be a low
CEQA.
man on the totem pole. And if the city council shows the character that they should show and treat those residents the same way they treated all the other people they backed away from, you'll be fine.
Right.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank
Yeah.
you very much. I
And
appreciate that.
and hopefully we'll help them be convinced of that action in a moment.
Because that's exactly how we feel right now, is low man on the totem pole. You know, we just weren't loud enough in the very beginning when we were not aware of the plan. And we're the only ones still standing to fight this. And everyone else in town has taken care of their little corner of the neighborhood. And when it was everyone together working for this,
You might want to get some T-shirts made for the city council.
Don't.
It's a kind of an inside joke.
all right. Thank you very much.
Yeah, don't invest in those T-shirts. They don't last long. All right. All right. I need someone else. Yes, go ahead. Yeah.
You all know me, I'm Carol Flaherty. I own a
Carol,
couple of
yes.
properties in Atherton, and we're a developer in Atherton. We've been building here since 1985. We've built 22 houses here. We've built 200 overall. So I do know setbacks and FAR and building heights and standards. First, I want to compliment Brittany and Tom because I think they have done a hell of a job.
Yeah. Yes.
And I've had the pleasure of meeting with Brittany for the last couple of weeks, along with some others from the Atherton Building Housing Coalition. And I want to say I have found her to be receptive to our comments, in spite of the fact some were irate. And really, I see a lot of what we have said incorporated into tonight's presentation. And I am really happy that you all are working with us. I think you're professionals. I think you've done a super, super job. And I am a very critical person, as Brittany well knows, on this. So why am I here? Because I think we need to get some reality, some building reality into these plans. And so Jeff Morris, who had planned to be here tonight, but he's in Mountain View on a building project before their council. And I and Brittany decided to do some back in the envelope calculations. We did them independently. We had no idea that others were doing this. And we met and we presented our 3 separate plans. And lo and behold, there were the same calculations within a few hundred feet.
Wow.
So what are you really going to get on a 1-acre lot? And how are you going to do it? Well, that little slide that Brittany and Tom talked about with 80 feet at the back, you know what? That's real. That is where the building is going to be. And at 80 feet, you are going to have 27 feet behind you for an above-ground garage, if that's what you go for, which we are opposed to. You're going to have 26 feet for the driveway because that's required by the Menlo Park Fire Department. You're going to have 8 feet for sidewalks, 3 feet for air conditioning pads. And then those trees, you do need the 18 feet, and that's going to put you right at the side of the building. So that 80 feet is real. When the residents came to you all a year ago, the city council and the planning commission, we asked for 3 things. I'm going to talk as a resident now. I moved here in 1985. We asked to keep the character of the town. We asked for our privacy to be preserved. And we said, if we have to go through this HCD exercise every 8 years, let's get it right this time. And you're right, Eric and Tom, there's no requirement for low income, but there is a requirement for affordability. And we in the Housing Coalition, which is 10 developers plus extended residents, do not find $4 million townhouses to be affordable.
Right.
We think you're going the wrong, not you, but the town is going the wrong way. And what you're doing, the town, is you're subsidizing developers who are like me, who are going to make a lot of money off of those, to the detriment of the town. We need to get back to 10 affordable units in a building that working people can actually afford so that we meet HCD's mandate. So how are you going to do that? I actually like that Pasadena model a lot because what the Atherton residents want is a building that looks like a house, that is uniform with what our town looks like today. And that means a 34-foot height. It means the standards that we have today for single-family homes. And I'm going to tell you about that standard, 60 feet in the front, 60 in the back, and 10 to 50 on the sides. That can be done, and you can have up to 14 units, because I'm going to tell you how, in that building if you have underground parking and you have dormers with 2 to 4 units on the top floor. You'll have 3 floors, but don't call it that. From the front, it will look like 2 stories. You'll have 2 to 4 units in the top. And by the way, those dormer units should not count on the FAR. It should be like basements that we have today where they don't count, where you get square footage for free, but you'll get more units in them. And you will have studio, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom units in there. You can sell as condos, you can rent them, whatever you want. You'll have a footprint of the building of 4,500 square feet, but you will have to go underground if you're going to have those setbacks. Let's say you guys decide, nope, we're not going to have underground, which by the way, La Jolla mandates and Pasadena has it in their plan. And that really looks good. And for all these people.
I thought you, a couple meetings ago, I thought you said you didn't think that underground parking was affordable. I've always been for.
We're for underground parking. We want it.
But didn't at one point you say there was no way to build underground parking that would?
No, there is. We fully think there is.
Okay,
what
good.
the issue has been is affordability, but you're going to have underground anyway because you got to have mechanical
Right,
rooms.
right. That's what I think.
So
too.
you're going to have it. It's going to be dug. You
Right.
might as well put it in there instead of having 5,000 square feet off that lot in a garage that's only 10 cars.
Right.
If you don't go underground, the entire area above is going to be building, and asphalt and no green space, very little.
Right.
So let's say you don't do the underground. Then above ground, you will have to have a 25-foot setback at the front, 18 feet at the back because your garage is going to be in there, and you're going to have 10 feet on the sides because there is no way to get the driveways, the trash area, the dumpster, which is 800 feet, by the way, of the lot. 55% of the lot is a 4,500 square foot building pad and all this other stuff.
All right. So I'm trying to figure out what you agreed with Brittany's presentation.
So what I agree with is, first of all, you will need 80 feet to come from the back of the lot to the building.
All right.
There's no way around it.
All right.
If you have above ground parking, you'll have to have 80 feet. The second thing that I agree with,
You said if you have above ground parking.
if you have above ground parking, you'll have to have 80 feet because you need 27 feet for the
Got it.
garage
We got it.
itself.
We got it.
Right.
We got it. We got it the first time.
All right. Now, the second thing that I agree with is the look of that Pasadena, because Tom and Brittany listened to us and went out and found it. And it looks like our homes. Where I do not agree is a 40-foot height. You do not need it. And for those people in Lindenwood that have primarily a lot of 1-stories, do you want 40 feet looming over you?
Speak to
No.
Speak to us. All right?
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
So I think we can do this, and we can do it with underground parking, and we can make it look really attractive and not trash the town and the neighborhood. But we should not be subsidizing developers. And by the way, you need to get rid of the in lieu fees. You should not allow a developer to get out of the 20% low income by paying an in lieu fee. That is subsidizing the developer.
Right. I agree
Thank
with
you
that.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else? Go ahead.
I'll be quick. I'm sorry I didn't get home till 3:30 last
That's
night,
right.
but I cut my vacation short 10 days so I could come and talk with you.
All right.
So
We're
it's
a
been a long
party,
day.
so just enjoy it.
I'd just like to say they can build those elsewhere. Don't build them in Lindenwood, okay? The first kid who's riding to school and gets killed by somebody pulling out of these areas is going to be a crisis and it's going to be horrible. But it will happen. There will be accidents. You've heard enough about that. I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about the livability of the entire neighborhood.
Right.
Okay, and you know why? Because you can't have a tree screening it. That's not going to keep people from looking out and seeing everything you're doing in your backyard. It's not going to stop the noise. It's not going to change the character where you have 10 to 14 families looking down on you. It's not one family, okay? And it's not one or two families with an ADU. It is 10 to 14 families there invading you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Anyone else? Anyone online, Sean? All right. Well, this is about 4 hours earlier than I thought it would be. So I will go ahead and close the public comment section and bring it back for discussion and action as appropriate by the Planning Commission. Bob, you want to start? Got anything?
Well, I've got a number of specific issues with these building standards. And a lot of them were created by the fact that by the way, Carol's compliments are, you know how I feel about that. You guys have done great work, but you're trying to take one set of objective design standards and back them in to fit the Oakwood property. And you could end up with 25-foot setbacks when it's applied to another property. It's absolutely unacceptable. So, I mean, what really we should have is some multifamily zoning for the appropriate sites, if we ever agree on what those are, that is a completely different set of standards in terms of setbacks, et cetera. But when you're building 20,000 square feet of living space or more on a house on Bay Road that looks down on a house on Frederick, shallow lots, et cetera, these standards don't work the way they're written.
Yeah, and I have an issue with the 40 foot. I think if we're going to use a standard, use the 34, which is consistent with what we do for everything else. Frankly, I don't care about market. I want to put market come to us. All right. So somebody mentioned to me that when I was a kid, my dad was going to law school, and we used to drive through from San Francisco from down here to see where the rich people lived. In our 1960 Valiant, we'd see these houses down there, and we go, "Wow, this is really cool." I want to keep that feeling while we meet the mandate. So, to the degree that we can make it look like the homes in that neighborhood, to the degree that we can do things to mitigate traffic issues, because I don't think many of these properties are appropriate. I just don't. I was one of the ones that was pushing for things to be an overlay on El Camino, because that's where the buses run. That's where but the issue here is that if I want to get a plan that gets accepted, because we can build the way we want to build within the time that somebody wakes up in Sacramento and says, this is not working. I mean, once this 850 unit proposal gets up there, and you won't. Here's what happened last 2 weeks ago. I was down seeing my kids and my grandkids down in Redondo Beach. We left the LA History Museum. We drove on 10 until we get to 405. 405 was jam packed all the way down, like that's their 101 down there. Took 10 and got off in Santa Monica. 13 miles to my daughter's home in Redondo Beach. 13 miles. 3 hours later, we got there on El Camino. okay? That is the, you know, but look what happens there. You walk down the street, everybody's parked on the street. Why? Because they've converted their small lot places with garages to ADUs. So everything about, you don't get affordable with density. You don't get anything other than misery with high density. So the idea that density gives you lower prices, it doesn't. The condos in Menlo Park are going to drive up all the housing prices in the rest of Menlo Park, because all of a sudden you're buying a $2 million condo. What a deal. I don't have to buy a $4 million house in Menlo Park. All of a sudden the $4 million house in Menlo Park's a $6 million house. So we've got to come up with a plan for livability. And that's part of what's going right with Atherton. It's a very livable place and all around it. So today I hope we make a recommendation to the council that says, okay, these are the standards that we want to live with, because I think the standards are going to be important to tell a developer why they can't develop, or why they can, or how they can. So having some development standards in place is critical. But also, I hope that we come up with some recommendations about which properties we don't recommend. That's all I got.
I'll let Paul go.
Paul?
Oh, I just don't know. It's just so frustrating to see what's been forced on us. I agree with Bob in the fact that you just can't have one size fits all. I totally agree with that, and there should be different standards for different size and uses of the properties. And I agree with Carol as far as the design needs to be in keeping with the nature of the entire town. And that includes the height limit that you're bringing up. We can't just throw that out the window just to accommodate some of these properties. So we still have to continue to thread that needle, as you mentioned, but we just keep batting it back and forth too. We got to make progress at some time. That's what I'm worried about.
Well, that's it. Yeah, we got.
All right.
Go ahead.
So there's a dilemma that we, the Planning Commission, need to sort of confront. Yeah. So, but it's going to take a little bit of explanation to understand this. And I mean, I can read off a motion right now, but you're not going to like it without understanding the situation.
Okay, so give us the overview of the understanding, so I understand where you're going with it.
The overview is for any of the Bay Road, the Ravenswood, or for Oakwood, there are three choices that we can make in terms of design standards. So we can make design standards around 10 units per acre, right? So we could go talk about that, and I have a personal preference on that, right? My personal preference on that is to basically use the standard that the town has for R1B parcels, which are 1/3 of an acre. And that would be that's an 18-foot high side rear wall or wall and a 28-foot peak height. So it's a two-story, and this is what is on all of the parcels along El Camino, all the parcels around downtown. This is the standard for them. And so you can't put the same type of structure on them, but we can get 10 townhouses that are 28 feet tall on a 1 acre parcel. And so that's
With what setback?
with
Too low. Too low a setback. That's the problem, right?
no, with a 30-foot setback. So the question is, it's like, what is the R1B standard? The standard is the 30-foot setback.
30 feet.
So, yeah. So if you think about, the analogy here is, if you think about the R1B parcels along El Camino on the west side, second parcel in from them is an R1A parcel.
Right, I got it.
Right?
Yeah.
And the setback is 30 feet from the main unit.
Mhm.
And so this is the conversation that Director Bendix and I have had. And so that was my argument in terms of how to lower the impact. It's still going to be 10 units, but it's 10 units versus, or in the case of the Bay Road, it's really 9 units. So it's 9 units versus 6 units is what you're really talking about.
Yeah, but we've already gotten feedback from HCD that they're not comfortable with anything less than
Right.
30.
So that's a second.
Right.
So let me go there.
All right.
Right? So to explain that, so so we don't need 30-foot high build structures to build 10 units on a 1 acre site. What we do need is a 30-foot structure to build 14 units. And Mr. Riddle was talking about that back and forth between 10 and 14. And so the issue here is that in the housing element, we as a town have told the state that we will consider implementing a mandatory inclusionary program. And that program would, and what we've said is, what the council has said is that we would require a dedication of 20% of the units to be priced at the county's
Below market.
yeah, below market at the county's level for low-income residents. And so we've told the state that in the earlier drafts of the housing element. And so if we go in a couple of weeks, in a month, with our response being that we're going to build 10 units on the RM10 overlay, and it's only going to have a 28-foot height, the state knows that you cannot get 14 units on a 1 acre
So what's your
with the
recommendation?
28. So that's,
So how do we go, how do we do both then?
well, one is we can actually make that decision and see what happens.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this is the dilemma.
Yeah.
And
That's,
so-
that's just not a smart move.
Right.
Not this late. I mean, a year ago was a
Right.
really good, it's a good strategy, but now it's not.
So now we have to talk about 14 units. And so Tom's graphics are great. But sometimes they're dealing with 10 units and sometimes they're dealing with 13 units. They're not dealing with 14 units. And so the question is what design standards do you need for 14 units? And so I can talk
And
about.
that's, and that, for those of you who are up to speed on why the 14 is because of the bonus densities that developers get if they provide low-income housing, they go above the 10. So our needle that we're threading all the time is how do you make it in our environment 10 likely with the idea that out there somewhere someone say, okay, well, I'll put a couple of 850 square foot units in for it so I get the low income that I want. And so they don't have 2,000 square foot units for those people, but they have nice little 850 square unit or 900 square foot units with their one, 2-bedroom, 1 bath or whatever they are.
Right. So the issue here is we as a town have not, and staff has not prepared the information yet on an inclusionary program, and we won't consider it for a month, 2 months. And so, but we have to make a decision tonight about what we're going to recommend to the town in terms of, are we designing for 10 units? Or are we designing for 14 units? And,
But 34 units, 34 feet designs for both.
sorry?
34 feet height
No,
designs for both.
Not for 10 units.
No, I know, but it allows 14 and permits 10. It provides enough space for 10 and permits the capability to go to
No.
14.
From the neighborhood's perspective.
No, I'm talking about the square footage. I'm just talking about square footage capability. 34 feet gives us enough room to build for that 14 target if the developer
Yes.
wants to. All right, so we know right now that we could approve 34 feet. We wouldn't give a 40-foot increase. 34 feet would give us.
Actually, it's 40 feet. but
Yeah, 40
with
feet,
a-
sorry.
With a 30-foot sidewall.
Sidewall.
Is it?
height.
Right. So if that for a year and a half beyond the due date, or 2 years beyond the due date, if we don't hit it exactly right on the target right now, they will not approve. All right. We are a big target up there. All right. They have decided that that certain communities are not cooperating. Woodside got it, Los Altos got it. So we don't want to be on that radar screen. And we got ourselves on it by not coming up with a plan, but when we had the plan a year ago. So my thing right now is do exactly what we need to do to get approved, and then figure out how we approve within the range that provides
set,
what the kind of development we want for the community.
So 14 units per acre is exactly what the Marquee site is. Right, 3 stories,
Right.
34 feet, 40 feet,
Mhm.
14 units per acre. It has
1.7 acres, 1.78
No,
acres.
no, yes,
Yeah.
but, and so it has 24 units.
Right.
But on an acre basis, it's 14 units per acre, which is where we're headed.
Right.
And so we can bring that site plan back up. Sean can find it and bring it back up. And Mr. Riddle asked, or I think Mr. Riddle asked earlier what the setbacks are. The setbacks on that project in Menlo Park, 133 Encino, are 16 feet
I know.
and 18 feet.
Right, I know.
And that site is a regular rectangle.
Right.
All of the Bay Road and all of the,
Is a long rectangle.
they're irregular shapes. And so they're not as efficient. And
Right.
so I think you have to have a 15-foot setback all the way around to get 14 townhouse units on 1 acre.
I'm not
And
desi-
we have a proof. I mean, we can look at that. We can look at this plan, right?
I'm not
Tom,
designing it. Go
Tom,
ahead, Bob.
If we approve or recommend anything to the council with setbacks of that, on that scale, she's going to make sure they go ahead and start building the gallows. for us. It doesn't make any sense.
I gotta,
So we're not, whatever, this plan is not going to be bought by HCD. No matter what tinkering we do with it tonight, it's not going to be bought.
Well, then we should do the 10 units.
My point is we should deal with these standards and with this attachment 10, the map, with something that won't get us hung. That's the best we can come up with for right now. And next iteration, we'll do some smarter things like have a multifamily set of standards and probably hold the ground on the El Camino properties. That's
See,
what needs to be
So
done.
here's the thing on the state level. We're on the bubble with the numbers that we have right now. And we're on extremely close to not being approved because we don't have anything really that looks like
Right.
an apartment house.
The enforcement division has already met with staff.
Right. So the fact that we're trying to approve something that allows for what I would call acceptable condo setups and not an apartment could, Brittany, you can correct me on this, but the fact we don't have apartments puts us really close to not getting approved. Is that correct?
That's the issue that we're trying to solve for here. And I wouldn't necessarily qualify it as apartments. It's multifamily housing that isn't institutionally affiliated.
And 3 stories minimum.
Correct.
Yeah, see, so that's why I'm thinking, let's not mess with the 34 feet. I don't want to go to, tell me again, is it 34 feet really or 40? I think if we can do it for 34, and if they want to do a plane on 34, then they do a
So
plane.
what we've done, if it's a pitched roof, the top of the peak is 40 feet, but the average of the pitch has to be 34 feet. If you come in and you want to do a flat roof, then you have to do 34 feet. And that includes any sort of parapet screening for mechanical equipment at the roof level.
Right.
But 40 feet, if you've got 60 and 80-foot setbacks everywhere, I could almost buy it, but we're talking about moving the multifamily to a 30-foot front setback. 40 feet is going to be outrageous. I mean, it's going to stick out like a sore thumb. Personally, I say we don't go over 34 feet, and similarly, I say we don't make exceptions to the 60-foot front and rear setback
Right.
that's R1, just to make it fit Oakwood or some other odd-shaped property.
Right. I agree.
If it doesn't fit Oakwood, then Oakwood's got to do something else.
Right, I agree. I think if we stick with the 34 feet, it's consistent with what we have on the properties right now. And it also makes it so that it's normal for buildings in the neighborhood. I've got a new property next to me that's probably 40. That's a single family home. that used to be a one-story Eichler. I call it the helicopter pad. So we've got to come up with a standard that gets us approved, that doesn't give us a chance to over-engineer it to the point where we don't get approved.
Let me tell you what, let me summarize what you just said. So a 34-foot height is a
Yes.
flat roof building.
Yeah.
So no pitched roofs,
They can have pitch roof, but
and
then
it's
they can have
not
pi-
in 34 feet.
they can have, they can have pitch roof too. They can have a pitch roof though. Yeah. you can have
With the
pitch-
dormers,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
They have a 28-foot
Right,
sidewall, I
right,
think.
right. So 34 feet, 34 feet tall is enough to do something that looks normal in the neighborhoods. Now, does it automatically give you three stories? Probably not. If you went for underground parking or garages, that
Yeah, so
makes it.
that's what we're saying, is a 34 structure with underground parking. That's the only thing you're going to be allowed to build that would here in Atherton.
Well, and you'd be allowed to build it, which is the operative words for me, is
Okay.
that you'd be allowed, that we're allowing building. Go ahead.
Just a question for Tom. I'm looking at slide 24. So the Roger Reynolds property am I reading that right? Is that 34 feet?
No, it's probably 40.
I was, 1 second, because I was just having Sean pull up the slide for the other property to show that height. So you can go to 30, the next slide. This one
page
is
24.
35 feet, just for
35.
some
Yeah,
context.
that was the Pasadena site. That's
Yeah, and then
35
going
feet.
back, so you're asking
believe
about
the
the
Roger
Roger
Reynolds
Reynolds
is
site
34.
to slide 24.
34. Yeah. Those are more than 34.
So we got that off their building plans.
Yeah.
Off the city of Menlo.
Those are 34s?
Yes, and so what they're doing is that 10-foot floor or story that I've mentioned in my staff
Okay,
report is
all right.
generally what we see is the industry standard. I know that people in Atherton are used to taller floor to ceiling heights.
So they make 2 stories.
But
out
when
of-
you see multifamily, you're really looking at 10 feet per story, except for maybe on the lower levels, but it might be accommodating a stoop or on the Pasadena development that was above a parking structure effectively that was semi below grade. And so there's a little bit of an extra rise there.
But you're not in favor of doing this.
No, I like the other design, but I'm
Just
also.
an example of what you can get out of 34 feet, I
Right,
guess.
but I'm also looking, so there's a couple things. First of all, doing 2 things, right? The HCD approval is going to be watching for everything that is a trip point for us not to be approved at this point because we're so close to the edge.
So do you think,
34 feet will, anything.
no, but do you think if we go in and say you can only build multifamily if you do underground parking, are they going to approve, are they going to certify?
I don't know. Brittany, what do you think about that? If you say underground parking?
Only underground parking.
So what I've been kind of discussing with my colleague Asher Cohen, who's on the call as well, and really focused and drilled in on compliance with the housing element in HCD, is that we have received comments that underground parking is a constraint. So we're looking at coming up with ways that maybe we can identify that, yes, it's a constraint, but perhaps there are ways to unbundle the parking. Unbundling means that the developer is selling or leasing the spaces separately from the unit. That might be a way to circumvent it. We can look at if we're allowing visitor parking above grade, maybe there's a percentage that can be provided above grade. We're really trying to stretch how to acknowledge that below grade parking would be identified as a constraint per HCD. Is there anything we can say, well, yes, but then we've reduced that constraint by other standards?
But everything you
and
just
it's-
said, there'd be at least some underground parking, I think.
Earlier, I think we addressed the fact that if you want to scale at a certain level, you have to do underground parking. So if you want to accommodate the unit size, but that's a developer's choice. That's different than
No, I think
mandating
but
underground parking.
the question, Brittany, is we cannot do the Marquee project because we're unwilling to accept the setbacks. And so the only way to,
Well, wait a minute. I'm not sure that, well, maybe not exactly that, but with that architectural look, we wouldn't have to have their setbacks on the Marquee. I mean, not this one, the Pasadena one. I'm looking more at the Pasadena. The Pasadena setback didn't on the one building didn't look that good to me. The building on the right had a very, was set, was.
Yeah, so, okay, if you're looking at the Pasadena project,
Yes.
go to slide 31, please. Okay, so this shows the buildable envelope. It shows how the scale of the building projects
so
into
hang on.
required rear
It does
yard.
all that, but it does it for 10 units. So 14 units is a 40% increase.
It does it for 10 units at an average unit size of 2,300 square feet.
Yeah,
each.
which is,
Right, and so this gets into the choices that the developer is going to make based on the market.
No, but the question is, are we designing for 10? Or are we setting standards for 10 units? Are we
well,
setting standards for 14 units?
you can be at 1,200 square foot units in that footprint. Here's the thing: is that the developer's going to say, "Hey, do I want to be able to have more affordable and fit in the property line, and it'll be 1,200 square feet." 2 blocks from my house, everybody lives in 1,100 square feet on a single family home.
You got that.
All right, so the idea of 1,100 to 1,200 for anything approaching affordable in this area, and to have somebody was telling me the other day is that when we used to drive down here, everybody in the neighborhood was a doctor or a lawyer, and now fewer of those people can afford to get in here. But for them to be on the way up and to have a home in Atherton for $2 million, with the Atherton address, it fits the profile of where that person wants to be. So I think the idea of assuming a 2,000 square feet is just makes it so that we over design it. I want us to be able to say, yes, we can get affordable. If you want affordable in Atherton, you got to go smaller.
Right.
That's all there is to it. If you want to have anything approaching, there's a property in
But
Mount.
there's a difference between saying you can only build 1,200 square feet versus.
Well, they
versus
don't,
the
they can build one
developer
at
can
they
decide.
can build one at 1,000 square feet and one at 2,000. There's a home right now in a fourplex in Menlo Park that I was looking at today just to see the standards. It's on sale for $1.28 million. It's a 2-bedroom, 1 bath in a 1952 fourplex. And it happens to be on the first floor, and it's lovely and but it's $1.2 million in an old place. All right. So, if somebody comes in and says, okay, here's a 2-bedroom, 1 bath in Atherton, and it's 1,000 square feet, 1,100 square feet, that's a saleable property. It is a totally saleable property, and there's nothing
So-
restrictive about it.
So, but my point is we can put constraints around in these design standards. We can say it has to be underground parking. We can say it can only be a 1,200 square foot unit. But can a developer pay $7 million for that 1 acre? Wait, let me
I don't
let me
care.
finish. No, I know you don't. But HCD does.
Well, HDD doesn't care if the person who owns the property that we're rezoning wants to sell. That's the thing, is that the thing about this is 2 stages here. First of all, we're zoning places that people have determined that they don't want to sell, and they're coming in and telling us, well, don't rezone me because I'm not going to sell anyway.
So what happens in 2 years when nothing has changed in Atherton?
Then we'll have to
be
come
out
up
of
with Plan
compliance.
B. That's what, then we'll say, hey, well, what about our 500 ADUs in the last year?
We hope.
That's what we say. Go ahead. Bob, you got something?
Well, I think we're getting into minutia that's beyond the scope of what we can accomplish. I mean, 10 or 14, they don't have to build 10 in an RM10. They can build 6, right?
Right, yes.
Whatever the builder wants to
Developer
build.
wants to build, yeah.
Right.
I think what we have to decide is what in attachment number 9 and what in attachment number 10 we're going to recommend to the city council. So just my own personal
agree with you,
opinion,
Bob.
which I can do very succinctly,
No, you're right.
is height, I think 34 feet.
I agree with you.
That's that's me.
Right, I agree.
When you get to the next topic of consequences is the setbacks. I can live with 300 feet, I think.
30. 300?
Excuse me, yeah, did I say 300?
Yeah, you said 300.
I can live with 30 feet in the
Right.
front
Right.
yard, but I can't live with these down to, all the way down to 25 feet in the backyard. They're gonna think we're crazy.
Right.
So I think the backyard, the chart he has, that Tom put together, starts at 80 feet.
Right. I'm trying to figure out what page you're on here.
The charts on setbacks are on pages 14 and 15.
All right.
And this
He-
is, to be
he's
clear,
in-
attachment 9.
I'm in the staff report.
Oh, okay.
I'm in the
that's
staff
fine.
report.
All right.
But I could see going from 80 down to 60 feet because 60 is the R1A zoning right now. But going any lower, I don't think we should do it. So that chart, to me, for the minimum rear yard requirements would stop at 60 feet. It wouldn't go any, so if the lot doesn't fit that tough, then
Right.
we can't approve a
Well,
multifamily overlay there.
Right.
And similarly with the side setbacks, I don't,
I know
the
nobody's looking.
25 feet minimum there, I'd use the same sliding scale that we use for our R1A.
Can I use your paper or somebody's paper? I'm not finding that quickly.
And Tom, you look at a 30-foot setback and, you know, that's right in line with what you were talking about with the R1B. So it kind of fits what you were talking about as far as adopting R1B for some of these R1A properties.
That's what I would do.
So 30 feet fits there.
In the front,
Oh,
No, no,
Right.
back.
but in the back, I would never go less than 60 feet.
We have that situation today on the parcels on El Camino.
I understand that, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about objective design standards that are gonna apply to all of Atherton. The people on Frederick don't want 25-foot setbacks on the properties behind them. They don't want anything behind them, but, and the rest of the town is gonna be that way too, unless you're in one of those areas possibly where
You
there are
made the choice
tiny
to live,
lots, like
yeah.
at the front end of San Benito, for example.
Where you chose to live, right?
Yeah,
right,
where you
right,
chose to live.
Right.
And now you're kind of getting towards setting it, you know, making sure that we have a different set of standards for these multi-unit,
Oh, what it means is we will need it.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
To do it,
right?
but I don't think we should be designing, I don't think we should have tried to rejigger these to make Oakwood fit, which is in essence what happened and what leads to these bizarrely unacceptable setbacks of 25 feet.
All right, so where are we going? I want to figure, so I agree with you. So what do we, so Brittany, take us to the promised land at this point. All right?
Generally, it sounds like R1A setback standards and height standards with the exception of 30 feet as the front setback. Are we on the same page
Well,
there?
that's on height and.
That's on height and setbacks.
Now, that doesn't,
But now we haven't
you-
talked
you-
about
you s-
FAR
yeah,
and second story FAR, which is a requirement.
that's over my pay grade. I don't have an answer on that.
I think the other thing too is that staff is going to need to produce a drawing that shows what realistically
Yeah.
can be built on a 1 acre site when we do these, in terms of multifamily.
For-
when
And
we do
I'm
these setbacks.
queued up to do that. We are ready and prepared to do that for the city council meeting.
You're assuming staff hasn't quit by then.
There, we did propose, sidewall height limits. It sounds like though that the direction would be to stick with whatever the requirement is in our 1A.
Yes.
Yes.
I agree with
yes,
that.
Yes.
So generally consistent with our 1A with the exception of reduced front setback of 30
Yes.
feet.
And possibly floor area ratios.
Well, I would think an increase in floor area
Right.
ratio.
I mean, like Jed commented on a 20,000 square feet of living space behind his property. It does sound a little overwhelming, but I don't know what that number should be, so I wouldn't object to to the 50% or whatever's in the standard here.
They could probably build a single-family home of that size now at this point now.
I think I have one going up
Yeah, yeah.
in front of me. I
Yeah.
mean, literally, I bet that the house is close to 20,000
Yeah.
square feet.
Brittany, are you looking for any recommendations on underground parking at all?
Well, a definitive, it's required, it's preferred, and we should encourage
I think
it.
preferred is the way to go.
Because I'm afraid if
That's
we
the
say
square footage.
required,
Yeah.
that's another thing the
You're
state's
right.
gonna
I
pick
agree.
up. They're just
Right. I
looking for
agree.
things to pick up.
But if we go
It's
preferred,
100%. It has to be 100 acre.
For 1 minute.
all right,
One
I,
minute, quick.
No, no,
I,
that's a square
I'm gonna,
footage of
we're
routine
still in the middle of
apartments,
something, so
2,200
let me
square foot
wait.
Apartments.
Well, we're not going to build those.
No, that's
So
that's
Brittany,
what we're zoning
Brittany,
for.
pull, I want to get to the point where we can actually make a recommendation
Yep.
to the council, because they're, if we don't make a recommendation, they'll do it without our recommendation because they have to on time. So we got to come up with so I like everything that's been said so far. What is the FAR?
Okay, so applying the R1A standards with
Yes.
a reduced front setback to 30, front setback requirement to 30 feet.
Right,
Encouraging underground parking where possible.
No, I don't think it's where we're responsible. I think it's going to have to be.
no, I think it's encourage wherever
Well,
possible.
we don't need where
Yeah,
possible.
we
You can
just
just
need
say
encourage.
encourage
Right.
underground parking.
Some properties are gonna be natural. They'll be on a slope, it'll slide right in. Other properties will be too flat to bother with.
Do you have thoughts on the number of parking spaces that we've put out as a requirement? And I can forward or
You
move
mean
forward.
two per property or as opposed to one?
How many per unit?
Yeah.
Or I can, let me just go through the
Yeah,
list here. We
yeah, go
had-
ahead. This is
We
good.
had a standard on lot coverage, trying to capture some of the discussion that's happened here relative to permeability and impervious surfaces. I know that there are some opinions on this. So whether or not it should be retained or it should be removed entirely, or if there's a middle
No,
ground.
I think what you have there, what's in the proposed standard is 1.25 spaces per unit. However, they get to build 2 spaces per unit if it's underground.
Right, that's a good
All right,
idea, yeah.
You jumped ahead to parking.
Right. As a matter of fact, the state will not allow us to do mandate more than one, right? Isn't it the case that they say that it has to be, we can't mandate two? I think I read that in a paragraph like 2 months ago.
I think it's important to have that incentive for underground parking on that too. I
Yeah.
think it's a good idea.
Right.
I like that.
I mean, all the rest of these things, site lighting,
Right.
facade, et cetera, I think we can, for the most part, I mean, there's going to be more time before the council meeting where people like Carol that have strong opinions can voice them. But I think the key things are the setbacks, the height, and the parking.
Right.
No, yes, but in addition to that, the question is how much space can 17 units have?
You mean a floor area ratio or?
Yeah,
or-
FAR.
A good way to look at this is, can the parking be exempt from floor area? Should it be included in floor area? Is it exempt if it's below grade?
I like exempt below grade.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, exempt below grade. That would be great.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty much already in there as an incentive, so.
Yeah, that would be very cool.
And then I see 3 spaces per unit, provided they're all underground. Was that, it was kind of going by there for a second.
Yeah, so that's allowing more parking if
If it's
you are
underground.
locating it below grade
Okay.
per unit.
People are making basements now big enough to fit in a whole parking lot that happened next door to us. They have 6,500 or 4,500 square foot
So
basement.
one thing I think Commissioner Bryant has raised in the past is what is the footprint of the garage relative to the below grade garage relative to the footprint of the dwellings? Is that something that you want to constrain, restrict, and provide greater flexibility?
So
We don't really have a standard addressing that. how big the garage, below grade garage could be.
No, but we have, under R1A, we have all kinds of rules about accessory
Well,
buildings.
the rules for basements are that they have to align with the main building footprint. Generally, right? And so it could be that if we're encouraging developers to use below grade parking and we're giving them bonuses and the number of parking spaces to do that, and they're locating extra storage or bicycle parking requirements below grade, then the footprint of that can expand. And so I just kind of raise that as something that you can provide feedback on now. And I
Well-
can look at it and provide additional information to council before we actually put
It's
forward.
underground, I don't care.
Well,
No, so,
Yeah.
so just
go ahead.
to do the numbers. 17 units at 2,200 square feet is 44,000 square feet.
Yeah,
That's 100% FAR.
Yeah.
Not including the garage,
yeah.
which we're assuming is underground.
Yeah.
So if
That-
you want
and-
less than
And that math works for the too big a unit. That's
Right,
what, yeah,
right.
that's what I'm saying.
So if we
And-
cut
and
it
too
in
ma-
half for
too many
1,200
units.
square feet, it's a 50% FAR.
Right. Well, that's about right.
But you don't have to build, the builder can decide how many units and how big they are.
No, we're talking about the limit though.
So,
Well, the limit is going to be set by floor area ratio, which,
Well, but if you exempt the below grade parking from
Exactly.
floor area, there are no limits to how big that can be. And
I'm sorry,
that's
say
what I'm
again?
at. If you exempt the parking garage, the below grade parking garage from floor area, then we don't really have any set limitations on how big that garage can be.
well, okay, so all I would say is, and this goes back to being the V1 of this rule. I think it's appropriate for us to say that the underground parking cannot be beyond the footprint of the building. And the reason for that is twofold. One, because it's consistent with what we do right now. Two, it allows us to change it later on if we need to. Well, on that one area, if we have a problem with developers and they need more space.
Mhm.
And three, it also makes it so that we end up with with less digging and less time and less cement
Fine.
and everything else, right? So, yeah, all those things line up. Now, if, everybody's gonna sue us, so, take a number. So the aspect of this, it should be suing the state, not us, by the way. The aspect that I want to do is, again, that works. It doesn't work on 2,000 square feet, but they can have 2,000 square foot and a bunch of 1,200. But the idea is, let's get something to the council that is doable from the standpoint of it really is a real plan. It really does have some basis in precedent we have in the city because it matches other things we have. And it still allows us to fit the architecture the way we want to make it look within the city. All those things work for me on this. So what else, Brittany? What else do we need to address? Yeah, go ahead.
because we
Go
got to
ahead.
turn this into a motion at
but-
some point.
Yeah, but we don't even know what it's to go in it. So what are you saying in terms of FAR? Or what are you saying in terms of the size of the unit?
I don't care.
Here.
I don't care.
No, but we have to say what the FAR is going to be.
But I don't have to say what the unit size is.
You have to say what the average, tell me the average unit size for 17 units. We multiply that, divided by the
1,200 square feet.
Yeah, so that's about
1,000 square
It's
feet.
about 22. I'll figure it out. But it's about a 50% FAR.
Is that?
So that's consistent with what we've currently recommended is 50% FAR with 5% bonuses for various things like a pitched roof, below grade parking, a habitable dwelling, like a habitable attic space, taking advantage of those. You can direct us to go back and look at the incentives that we've crafted based on the fact that we're now shifting from that 40-foot peak to a flat 34 across the
You
board.
could also, per Carol's suggestion, you could exempt the attic space, so to speak. And that keeps, then we could live with 50% FAR and still probably get some some 2,000 square foot units.
So where you could land is 50% FAR with direction to staff to study ways that might incentive below grade parking, or use other exceptions to FAR to accommodate habitable space in the attic.
Right. That works. That works. Does that work?
So
Yeah.
Britt, I'm new to this, just one quick question. At some point, HCD needs to convert whatever we submit to them to a number, correct? I mean, if we're going for 348 units or whatever, like the plan that we submit, they are at some point going to need to take these units and do a calculation and say,
Yeah,
this is gonna.
that's actually not correct in this case, Sandy.
Well, can I
Yeah.
touch
go
on
ahead, Brittany.
this?
Go ahead, Brittany.
So there's two main components of the housing element. I like to think about it in terms of a quantitative requirement and a qualitative requirement. The quantitative requirement is the RENA allocation, and how are you going to construct so many units in each income category using a number of programs. In Atherton, that includes ADUs, SB9s, the
Okay, put it
units
together in
on the
there.
school sites and PFF zoning.
And our number's
What
3
happened
something,
is
48
or
before,
something,
yeah.
yeah.
HCD came back and said, well, great, but you're not doing enough to address the fact that you're a predominantly single-family zone town, and you have been since your incorporation, and you're not doing anything to address AFFH. So you need to include multifamily housing on independent sites that are absent of any institutional affiliation in your suite of programs, but they don't have any specific numeric quantity on how many sites we need to zone, because all it is an exercise in facilitating multifamily development moving forward in the town.
And so right now, the way the housing element is written, all of the requirement for low income, for moderate income, low income, very low income is actually covered by the school sites. The ADUs cover the extremely low income. So the RM10 right now is not set up it's not needed to fill any of the RENA mandate.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
we'll make we should be able to make the number without this, but because they don't allow us not to have this provision in
It
our
has
plan-
to be
Yeah,
included.
I mean, it goes toward the market rate
Right.
Got it.
component of the RENA.
Okay,
All
thank you.
right, so Brittany, you have the components that you're thinking about, okay?
Yes.
All right, so then there are other aspect of it was the actual highlight of the properties that were chosen, right? Bob?
Right. And I would recommend that the Bay Road properties listed in attachment 10 be removed from the overlay consideration
Yeah.
and make that part of the recommendation to the council.
What is that again?
The Bay Road.
It's
Bay Road
attached,
overlay.
attachment 10 is the map of the overlay zones.
Okay. And so,
And I've got numerous reasons, but by far the biggest one is that the Lindenwood homeowners deserve the same consideration from the council that
okay.
all these other areas receive. I got a lot other reasons because of the depth. And like 999, the front of the property is the narrow side, so, you're gonna end up with at best a 30-foot rear
Well, yeah,
setback.
I mean, I ride my bicycle on that road all the time, right? So,
You shouldn't, it's dangerous.
Oh, well, I know,
Yeah,
I know,
it is
I know,
dangerous,
I know,
actually.
I know.
Kids
But
also
I
ride
rode my Schwinn Stingray up to Tahoe from Carson City, so I live dangerously. But that road, I can't imagine cars coming out, cars coming around the corner, or a kid coming around the corner. There's no way to mitigate that the way it is without blowing out something. So, it's all this entire mandate for this plan that we've been given by the state is bad planning. That one corner is terrible planning. So I just can't go for that. So Brittany, do you have enough for us to make, let's go through the items that you understand right now so that we can make a motion, all right?
Can I make
So let me
one
just-
technical comment, only
Uh,
technical comment?
I don't want to open up
As
public
long
comment.
as it's not too technical.
Yeah.
No, no, it's just that,
I didn't open up public comment, so no. Turn off the mic.
So
All right.
Brittany, going back to what you were just telling Sandy, so if we we're going to recommend dropping like 40% of the RM10 sites from the list. So the 6 remaining, do you think that that's adequate from how HCD is going to think about the firm of, fair housing?
To be frank, I don't know. But I will say that my recommendation last fall was that the town consider the density at 20 dwelling units per acre. So we're already below what I would think that HCD would require from the town.
And so here's the thing, is I don't think our recommendation about these properties are going to be accepted. I think it's going to go the way that they've already approved it. I think that what we're trying to do is our role is to talk about planning and provide the best planning advice we possibly can. All right, we provided it once. It was not accepted to do anything on El Camino for all kinds of reasons. We never had any input on these decisions. They just decided to do it. And I think that from a planning perspective, it's a bad plan. All right. So I'm not willing to put my stamp on it. So it's one of those things, 12 and a half years on the planning commission, and it might be the end of my term, but, but I'm still not willing to go terrible planning. And this to me is terrible planning. So let's go through the list of the items we're talking about approving. This will be part of a motion that Bob, you'll make. Is that all right?
That's fine.
All right. So Brittany, list out.
So since you're actually intending to take action at this point, I want to include some other things that I had put in just kind of as cleanup and
All right.
start with that and then get into kind of
All
those
right.
nuanced issues.
You okay with that?
So the first was to modify the revised housing element text and land use tables as recommended in the staff report. This gets to cleaning up the tables and figures that I mentioned, as well as the actual land use tables that talk about the employee housing, the agricultural distinction there. And then for R1B, we erroneously included the multifamily overlay as a line item. So just cleaning all of that up. That's the first thing. The second thing that I wanted to raise was the window privacy standard that Tom addressed in his slides. The language said any window facing an R1 district located on the second floor or higher shall be translucent but not transparent for any part of the window glass that is less than 54 inches above the finished floor.
Good.
That's fine.
I think that's something that's
Yeah.
pretty easy. So then moving into the more complicated development standards. We have the adherence to the existing R1A standards with the exception of requiring a 30-foot front setback.
Allowing up to 30 foot.
Sorry, did I say encouraging?
Good.
Because I was thinking of encouraging underground parking. Applying the parking standards that are included in the current recommendation.
Yep.
Using the proposed FAR of 50%, but continuing to look at how FAR could encourage using the attic space and encouraging underground parking.
And attic
And-
space use.
Yeah,
They could be
attic space
excluded, yeah.
use. An attic space use would be exempt from FAR. And then removing the Bay Road properties from the entire project.
Yeah, so in this,
Yeah, that's inherent in the R1A standards.
so we also need to cover the RM 20 and 40, right?
Correct.
In this motion.
So we haven't discussed that at all. So we would be moving
Approved
forward
as
with the
written.
RM 2040.
No,
as-
I have
Okay,
my point is in this motion you're making, we have to also deal with our 20 and our 40. 20 and
yes.
40, yeah. So on this one,
So what are we talking about now? What?
the school sites.
Oh, okay. I got it.
So my recommendation or proposal is that we delete 17.37.010 for RM 20 and RM 40. It's all the design standards that we just delete it.
What does that mean? What is that? What's the impact of that?
The issue, so there's all these design standards for the schools, most of which doesn't really make sense for them.
These are standards that are, if you're going to have a stoop or a porch entry to the housing development, it needs to meet this dimension and this height. And
The state standards around the educational standards or educational site standards, or what is that?
Well, there's,
this is just architectural design standards for entry treatments
Yeah.
is one of the things that he's getting at. Or if you are proposing a building and it tends to look boxy, breaking up and providing variation in the plane so
But
that creates architectural.
we've never had architectural standard for the PFS zones
Correct. This is
before.
entirely new.
So I think Tom's point is, why do we need it now?
Right.
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 and the other point is that basically what the council's done is they picked all the parking lots on the school
Yeah.
sites and said you can build on these.
Right, and then they're internal to the property as it is.
Yeah, but when you build on the parking, their use permit requires X amount of parking in those parking lots. And
Yeah.
so if you take it up with housing, you
Right.
got to replace the parking someplace
Right.
else. They're going to build parking garages, but they'll have to come back to us for a revised use permit.
All right,
And that's when we have the
all right,
opportunity.
and that's what deleting that does?
That's my take, yeah.
Is that true?
For the parking structures, yes.
No, yeah, so if they're doing anything where they change the parking, they're going to have to come back and revise the use permit.
Correct.
Okay,
And all the sites are on the.
all right, so deletion of 17.37010 fits what you think is okay or not?
010.
010?
Yes,
Okay, I'm okay with it. If you believe that, then I'm fine.
I can work with that.
All right, good. Bob, you okay with that?
So moved.
All right, was there more stuff that you had to add, right?
That's fine.
All right, good. So we have a motion?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All right, so I think we need a roll call on this one.
Commissioner Polito,
Yes.
Commissioner Tonelli,
Yes.
very good. Commissioner Bryant,
Yes.
Commissioner Levison,
Yes.
and Chair Lane.
Yes.
Very good.
All right, so we got through that. All right, now the city council, they will get what they need to take action. Is that correct, Brittany?
Yes.
Based on what we did? All right, and they can agree with us or not, but we didn't slow them down. And we gave them advice, I think, that improved the plan. So we did our job and I don't think they're going to be happy about it, but that's the way it goes. So with that, then we go to item 5, which is staff reports. And Brittany, you have anything?
No, not
All right.
today.
And Sean, do you have anything? All right. And then commission reports, we have a new commissioner. All right. Yeah, we're fully staffed.
There
All
you
right,
go.
so Sandy, give us a little rundown about you. We waited to the end because we didn't want to have her beat up early on, but let's go.
So
Since you stuck around.
I will be very brief. I've lived here since, I guess we built our house in 1998. So I've been here for a while. My children are actually 5th generation here. My husband's parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents all lived in San Francisco, and they all came down to Atherton when Atherton was the country. You only came down here
Yep.
to summer.
Yep.
All those houses on Walsh Road had sleeping porches on them,
Yep.
and nobody would be caught dead living here.
Yeah.
I mean, it was the boonies. So it's funny to see what's happened in 50 years, really, 50, 60 years, that it's gone from that to this. So I am looking forward to the opportunity to assist the council in helping with obviously representing the wishes of the residents while balancing that with the needs of the commission and the needs of the town. So thank you.
Welcome.
Welcome
Nice,
aboard.
nice
Thank
job
you.
on the first meeting too. Very good.
Thank you.
All right, and I don't have anything to report, which will make this shorter. Anybody else have anything?
Can I ask for clarification?
Uh,
I understand, Mr.
All right,
Polito,
I'm going to open up public comment, but first, very briefly.
as I understand, that's such a question. I understand Mr. Polito said to remove the recommendation of the planning commission was to remove the 4 properties on Bay Road and Ringwood, and then have the other changes to the
Design standards.
the building code standards. Is that correct?
Yes.
Great. Thank you very much.
All right,
I
great.
appreciate that.
All right, thank you. Yeah, you had a technical question.
Yes, my only comment was that the trees, pine trees, redwood trees, they have the roots span out about 2 to 3 times the length of the tree.
Yes.
So I have 3 pine trees which are 80 feet tall, about 5 feet from the neighbor's border. So if someone goes and digs a big underground parking lot, and I'm just saying for everyone in the town,
Yes.
right in the like 60 feet thing,
Right.
these trees might die.
Yes.
So at some stage, who would be the responsible? Perhaps I will be responsible for the cost of removing those trees because these are.
Well, Sally
in my-
was here earlier, but every time that we had a development, she's gone now. She was on that seat over there. Every time that we have in a proposal, the area to protect a tree at a neighbor's property and on the property are evaluated to make sure the trees don't get hurt.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to close the public session, bring it back to us. The only thing I need, let me check the agenda. What's the next item? Item number 7. I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye.